On Tuesday, June the 13th, 2023. It's 9 a.m. and we're in the community wing of City Hall. I would ask you all to please stand and join me in our Pledge of Allegiance. And following the pledge, you're welcome to remain standing for a moment of silence to reflect, meditate, pray, or pause for a moment. Thank you. If the clerk would call the roll, please.
Mayor Alfin.
Present.
Vice Mayor Danko.
Here.
Councilmember Hyder.
Present.
Councilmember Clufus.
Present.
Councilmember Pontieri.
Present.
All members are present.
Thank you. We move to the item public participation on our agenda this morning. In order for city staff to be able to respond to your questions or concerns, please fill out a comment card with your contact information. The comment cards can be found on the table near the agendas or available from the Communications and Marketing Director located in the back of the room. Anyone wishing to speak may approach the podium, provide their name, and may speak for up to 3 minutes. Please direct all comments to the mayor, be concise and to the point, avoid delaying or interrupting the proceedings, and do not make any irrelevant, impertinent, or slanderous comments. Any person who becomes disorderly may be barred from making any additional comments and may be removed. So with that, I would invite members of the public to please step forward and address City Council. Yes, sir.
Good morning, Robin McDonald, Palm Coast. I'd like the city to provide to me in a timely fashion the total cost of the stormwater bill, because as per the mayor's comments in the Observer newspaper, it's going to cost us, as residents, it's going to cost us 2 cents a day for this stormwater project. Well, I have a whole bunch of questions. So my questions are, first of all, how many single-family houses are in Palm Coast? How many duplexes? How many single-use commercial properties? How many multiple-use properties? What about the schools, churches, and nonprofit? Will the residents have a vote as to whether or not this stormwater fee passes, or is it going to be like past practice where the residents kind of voice their displeasure and the mayor and council votes in favor of it anyway? As most of you know, yesterday was the 7th anniversary of the Pulse massacre in Orlando. So I'm going to stand here and I'm going to wait until that little clock gets down to 49 seconds. And I want everybody in this room to stop and think where they were when they heard about this shooting. And the shooting just doesn't stop. It just doesn't stop. And we're not going to get into a political battle about what's right, what's wrong. So just bear with me, everybody. We're getting close. And I just think that we remembered June 6th last week. We're going to remember Pulse today. It's absolutely amazing how many people's lives can get ruined in 49 seconds.
Thank you for that, Mr. McDonald. Next speaker, please.
Good morning. My name is Jerzy Misztal, and I'm on 13 Faraday Lane on the end of the main canal, and I got the issue with the stormwater drainage design. I am there for 20 years. I dredged before, we was allowed to dredge twice to use the property, and I'm going on and on for 20 years with Mr. Muldoon, with whatever who was in charge in stormwater drainage. And up to today, there's nothing done. The Mr. Mayor stopped by in my property, so he knows exactly what I'm talking about. So if the stormwater drainage send the email and say they're not responsible, they have to take like the engineering. If they don't know how this thing work, they should put the sand in the bucket, put couple holes, and run the water high and see when the sand gonna land. And it's not everything. The drainage from projects from Publix, I think, and the other properties goes there, not even finished. They dredge the dirt when the water, heavy rain is coming, and create a humongous issue. And I'm just asking for help, because 20 years is a lot of patience. So, thank you.
Thank you for your comment. I'll follow up with you on that. Next speaker, please.
Good morning, Mayor. Gene Dowd, Palm Coast resident. Last week I was here and I spoke for a couple minutes, and I didn't follow what I said I'd try to do, and I will do it today. I get up here and I thank every first responder, military, men and women currently serving, law enforcement, fire, medical, EMTs, for all they do. And last week was moving the two firemen that spoke about 25 years ago in Palm Coast. But I don't think we mentioned the 49th anniversary of D-Day, where many men didn't go home. And I was going to get up at the end of the meeting, but it was 4 hours long already, and I didn't want to hold it up. But I remember the Greatest Generation, because my father was part of that, and my mother. They were teenagers during the war. But I also want to thank the city employees, and specifically, I try to do this now, and that is Memorial Day service at the park. It was very emotional. It was very well put together. The two families that were represented that had lost their sons were there. And Mr. Dawson, I believe is his name, Jared, was running around like a chicken with his head cut off. He wanted to make it special for all the veterans, especially the families that have lost a member. So to the employees at Palm Coast, thank you very much as well.
Thank you for your comment. Are there any other members of the public that would like to address City Council at this time? Seeing no one approach the podium, I will close this section of public comment. Council members, anything specific that you would like to address now, or staff will follow up with the speakers? All right. City Manager, you have the notes on the questions that were asked. We'll follow up. Thank you. So with that, we'll move to the presentation section of the agenda this morning. And our first presentation will be an overview of property taxes and millage rate, or the TRIM. So, Ms. Alves, if you would proceed.
Thank you. Good morning, Mayor, City Council. Staff is here today to do a presentation to you on property taxes and TRIM in preparation for the adoption of the maximum millage rate next month. So now I'll have Gwen get started.
Good morning, Mayor and City Council. Gwen Ragsdale, your Budget and Procurement Manager. This is a look at the upcoming months. Today, we will cover property tax and the TRIM process. We will come back to council on July 11th to review the general fund budget, and again on July 18th for the adoption of the maximum millage rate. So now we will move to truth in millage. So truth in millage, or TRIM, establishes statutory requirements. All taxing authorities levying a millage must follow and requires full disclosure of the rates and amounts of taxes prior to levying the taxes. The City of Palm Coast submits a package to TRIM for evaluation to make sure we have met the requirements. We receive a certification letter, and all taxing authorities follow the same rules. So this is a look at the TRIM timeline. By June 1st, the property appraiser provided a total assessed value of the non-exempt property. The City of Palm Coast received an estimate of $8.6 billion and an increase of 12.49% from the previous year. By July 1st, the property appraisal will certify the taxable value, and within 35 days of the value certification, the current year's proposed maximum millage rate must be set. As noted earlier, on July 11th, we will bring the general fund budget presentation to City Council with the opportunity to set the maximum millage. As a reminder, the assessed millage can be reduced but cannot be increased after this point. So property taxes. The process of determining property taxes involves 3 agencies: the property appraiser, the tax collector, and the city. The property appraiser is responsible for the assessed value, which determines the base for the calculation. There are several exemptions that are available to residents, and the applicability of an exemption is determined by the property appraiser's office. The net of the assessed value, less exemptions, represents your taxable value. City Council determines the millage or tax rate, and the millage rate multiplied by the taxable value gives us the ad valorem tax amount. The third agency, which is the tax collector, is then responsible for collecting the taxes from the residents and submitting them back to the City of Palm Coast. Because Florida is subject to the Save Our Homes Act, it is not unusual to have a significant difference between the market value and the taxable value. Under the Save Our Homes Act, the increase in taxable value of a homesteaded property or a main residence has a cap of 3% or CPI. So as market value increases at a higher rate, it creates a gap, and there could be a significant difference in tax due from a resident that has held a property for 10 years and the next door neighbor that just moved to the city. The difference is due to the cap. The property appraiser's website has a calculator that can help prospective residents calculate the applicable property tax due for a particular address within the county. This graph is an illustration of that gap. As you can see, in year 1, both taxable and market values are the same. If the market value were to increase 50%, the taxable value could only increase by 3% as the years pass, and the gap becomes more significant. This is a sample of a trim notice for a property with a taxable value of approximately $100,000. The city's portion represents $494 of the total property taxes of $2,190. There are several other agencies that levy taxes in Flagler County, such as the Board of County Commissioners and the School Board. The trim notice is sent out by the property appraiser's office, and you can see on the slide it lists when the public hearing will be held and where it is for each taxing authority.
Gwen, can I stop you there just
Yes.
for a question? And this is off the track a little bit. Who is it that's actually responsible for the format of this form? Would that be the county, the supervisor, not supervisor, I'm sorry, the tax collector, the property appraiser? Do we know?
It is issued by the property appraiser's office, but I'm not sure if they received the format from the
I
Department
just
of
have to
Revenue
make a
or not.
comment, and this is for our public, especially our growing number of new residents. That document is probably one of the most difficult and complicated forms I've ever seen for newcomers to understand. I know you guys look at it all the time, but the new folks coming in, it's like they're lost in it. Okay, sorry to interrupt.
Not a problem. So this is an illustration that offers a quick look at how each dollar of tax collected is allocated between those taxing authorities. So Flagler County receives 44 cents, the school board 29 cents, the city of Palm Coast 24 cents, and the remaining taxing districts are the 3 cents. So I will now turn the presentation over to Helena.
So this chart shows you how your property taxes and state taxes are used in the city's general fund. This is from your 2023 adopted budget. The largest percentage, or 44%, is used for public safety. That includes the fire department and also the enhanced service contract with the Flagler County Sheriff's Office. It is followed by Public Works Streets Division at 17%. As you can see, community development, including planning and code enforcement, account for 14%, followed by parks, administration, facilities management, and contingency. So when we come back to council on July 11th, you will receive detailed information for each of these categories individually, and you'll also hear from each director on the requested funds for fiscal year 2024. This chart shows the history of, of the city, of the millage rate, property values, receipts collected, and population. The population estimates are from the Bureau of Economic Business Research website. They provide population estimates every April 1st. This year's population number is coming from the 2022. Taking this information and 3.9% growth rate, community development is estimating the population for fiscal year 2024 to be at 100 to 67. The fiscal year 2024 values, as Gwen mentioned earlier, are based on the preliminary evaluation received June 1st from the property appraiser's office. We will receive the final on July 1st, and you will be updated on that value during your July presentation. As you can see, the same millage rate, at the same millage rate of fiscal year 2023 of 4.61, this city would generate approximately $38 million in ad valorem revenues, and that represents an increase of approximately $4.2 million. This chart is a millage rate comparison of Florida cities that have a population between 80,000 and 110,000. This information came from two websites, the Florida Department of Revenue and the Office of Economic and Demographic Research. There are currently 16 Florida cities that fall into this category. Of the 16, the city of Palm Coast has the 5th lowest millage rate. Of course, this is not apples to apples comparison, as we don't have details about these communities and the services that they offer. This offers a millage rate comparison for our neighboring cities. Palm Coast has the 2nd lowest millage rate with the highest population rate. Same as in the previous slide, communities are all different, so this doesn't represent an apples to apples comparison, just a snapshot. So we want to remind the public where they can find all our budget information. As in previous years, we have a link on the city's website. This is where we'll post presentations, calendar, and any supporting documentation as we move through the budget process. And as a reminder, we will be back on July 11th. We've also added this to show the public where they can contact the property appraiser and the tax collector's office. So we've included phone numbers and email addresses. This completes our presentation. We'll take questions from council.
City council members, this is really just the calculation, the administrative calculation of the budget. Are there any questions on how this is actually, created?
How it's created, no, Mayor.
Okay.
One additional comment I'd make just for the public out there, we talked about homesteading homes, but also there's a maximum cap of a 10% increase in residential properties that are not subject to the homesteading. I think we were trying to illustrate that there's an inequality created between homes that are homesteaded and the rapid rise of property values, but I just wanted to throw that in there, that even if you're not homesteaded, there's a maximum cap of 10%.
Yes,
So
that's
for the public out there, sometimes you hear stories about 200% tax increases and things like that. That's not the truth.
And to piggyback on that thought, help me with this. Apartment renters, through their rent payments, are paying ad valorem tax that's never capped and is always at the highest level. Correct?
I'm not sure about that information. I can verify that for you.
All right. Mr. DiLorenzo, can you comment on that?
So, Mayor, maybe I can help out. So I think if it's an apartment complex that's not individually owned by, condo owners, that they're essentially, I think you're probably correct, in that they're coming in, they're renting, and it's a commercial business, so it's taxed the same.
Yeah, the point being that those dwelling units help to protect or help to pay the balance of the bill that the single-family homeowners are protected against with their cap, help balance it a bit. So just a comment. Helena, there's, your slides have a lot of underlying information that would hope we will get to further discuss, because you've made some comparisons, you've shown some other kinds of comps and information that is really very important to help us better understand our Palm Coast, which is quite unique, and I think your slides will help us understand that. So thank you very much for the presentation.
If I may, Mayor, sorry,
Yes.
just, I do have one question, generally speaking. Are we looking ahead at how our ad valorem revenues are going to be affected by any future exemptions that could possibly be coming down the pipeline from the state?
So as there are discussions of changes, we do try to determine through our forums and our other professionals in the industry what we could be potentially be looking at. But at the end of the day, whatever the state decides is what we budget for.
Certainly, I just want to make sure that we're always keeping an eye on that. Obviously, we rely so heavily on ad valorem here that I think it's very important that we just keep that in mind. And then I would just encourage council I think this is kind of the kickoff of budget discussions, heavy budget discussions, start looking at ways that we can save money monthly, especially with our SAP, looking at what our priorities are, just so that we're not having tougher discussions in August and September.
So Councilperson Pontieri, just to add to that, so I am aware that the governor has just signed legislation that will create a new exemption in the state of Florida, which will exempt the spouses of lost first responders at the federal level from ad valorem tax in the future. Now, the impact on the budget is insignificant, but yes, it's a very good idea to be looking forward to those potential new exemptions in the future. So thank you for that.
Sure. And thank you for your presentation.
Of course, you're welcome. Thank you.
Our next presentation is Brown & Brown Insurance Overview.
Good morning, Mayor, City Council, Renina Fuller, Director of Human Resources. I'm here today with Danielle Boyle, who is from Brown & Brown. Brown & Brown is the third-party administrator for our self-insured health insurance plan. And Danielle's here today to give us an update on our recent market analysis.
Good morning, Mayor. Good morning, council members. As Renina said, I'm Danielle Boyle. I'm a Senior Vice President with Brown & Brown. Been with the organization for about 14 years. Had the pleasure of working with the city for about 3 years now. So today we will take you through some population insights, who is enrolled in your plan versus how many are eligible, go through the marketing summary for this year to show you what we were able to do for the city at a high level, talk about what components drive your self-insured plan's costs, and then discuss the renewal projection for the next fiscal year. So just some insights on the city. Your total eligible employees there's 513. 76% of them are male, 24% are female, with an average age of 46. Looking at your enrolled population, it's very similar. You have an average age of 46, mostly male. And then the waived population, so those that choose not to enroll in the city's coverage, we look at that pretty closely every year as well. 64 have decided to waive coverage. They have it through another source. Now in the orange towards the bottom of the page, there's some interesting statistics that we like to monitor because as we age, we cost more as far as our healthcare goes. So looking at those employees in that 60 to 65 age bracket and those over age 65 who are actually eligible for Medicare, but as an active employee, many of them choose to stay on the city's plan because it is a great plan. You do have 49 employees that have enrolled in the city's coverage that are 60 to 65, and 21 that are age 65 and older. Waived population, you've got a few that have decided to forego the city's benefits and choose another avenue. Lots of tiny print on here. I'm just going to tell you what the big picture is. So we marketed all lines of coverage this year, and in our world, when we say marketed, it means go out to the carriers and obtain quotes and negotiate for the city. And so we went out for medical, stop loss, pharmacy benefit manager, dental, vision, life, disability, everything this year. So self-insured plans are different than a fully insured plan or any other insurance really that you purchase where you just pay a fixed premium. It's made up of different components. So your administrative fees. You pay for Blue Cross Blue Shield of Florida to administer your claims, and you pay for their network discount, which is very strong in your area. So that means off of your billed charges for a hospital stay, you're paying a significantly lower cost due to that PPO discount that Blue Cross Blue Shield has negotiated for all of their membership. Also the reporting, the customer service, and any care management programs that will help you manage your costs and keep your employees healthy in the long term. Stop loss premiums. So self-insured plans, especially at a middle market group like the city, you do want to have some protection. And so you have two types of insurance coverage built into the plan. And they really insure you against more catastrophic risks. So you have your specific or individual stop loss, that is $175,000 for the city. So that insures you against one person exceeding that amount. So if someone gets really sick, $1 million of cancer treatment, for example, or something that happens during birth, I've seen very expensive claims, you're insured, anything above that $175,000 is paid by your carrier. You also have aggregate stop loss. So what happens if you just have a really, really bad year and it's a lot of those $175,000 and above claims, but they really stack up to get higher than what we have budgeted for? Well, you're insured at an aggregate level, a worst case scenario level. And so that's a small part of your overall cost that you pay for that aggregate protection. And what drives the majority of the cost are the claims. So we have medical and pharmacy. Medical is things like doctor's visits, labs, surgeries, inpatient hospital stays, outpatient stays, ER, urgent care, and medical trend, which is the inflation of the cost of care. I know inflation is a huge topic just generally, but medical inflation has been around my whole career and beyond. It is sitting at about 8 to 11% right now. We're seeing it a little bit on the 11% side in the last 6 months due to hospitals coming to the carriers and wanting to renegotiate their contracts as a result of COVID. So staffing costs increased dramatically, and that was an unforeseen expense for the hospital systems. So they were calling the Blue Crosses, the Cignas of the world back to the table and trying to get higher reimbursement rates for those procedures. And so we're seeing closer to that 11% just in the last 6 months. So keeping our eyes closely tuned to that. Now, pharmacy, these are your medications that treat conditions. So things like just your simple managing your blood pressure and high cholesterol, to more significant specialty spends. So specialty medications are those either oral cancer medications, or you inject yourself with something for rheumatoid arthritis, psoriatic arthritis, all the commercials that you'll see in the evenings if you're watching TV. Those are a much higher trend rate of 15 to 25% right now. There's two sides to that, of course. If you are on a specialty medication, it's adding tremendous quality to your life in most circumstances and keeping you at work. However, the cost of those treatments, where it used to be maybe 15% of your total cost, I'm seeing closer to 30 to 40% of the total cost of healthcare is pharmacy related. So just wanted to let you know kind of the moving parts to the health self-insured plan. That brings us to the renewal projection. The city, like many of my other clients, has seen an unprecedented spike in high-cost claims. And when I say high-cost claims, we're talking anything over $50,000 for one person would fall into that category. And the renewal projection is coming in at a 20% increase, which has never been seen before for the city of Palm Coast. You've been very stable over the years. We did go out to market and negotiate. We were able to get savings in your administrative fees. Stop loss is looking like it's coming in close to flat, if not right around there. That will be firmed up very shortly. Your pharmacy, we're able to save 30% on pharmacy through negotiations and improving the overall just setup and rebate structure of your pharmacy plan. But the claims, it's truly the projection by the actuaries that say your cost over the last 12 months were this. We are projecting a 20% increase for the next fiscal year. And so across our book of business, we've seen something similar. Also as a result of delayed care and screening during COVID. I know even for myself, my Well Woman exam was canceled during COVID, and I had not gotten back on her books, unfortunately, and I think that a lot of people have kind of followed suit. You get out of the habit or off of the appointment book and you delay that cancer screening, which could catch something a lot earlier than we're seeing just generally across the country.
Is there an easy to understand reason for the spike that you saw in the high level claims?
Predominantly cancer claims, sir.
But since we've been stable for a period of time,
Yes.
do you all have any reasoning, rationale for it?
Just generally is all. I mean, each person is going to be specific, right? But you've got quite a few people that have mid-level, over $50,000 cancer treatments, whereas in prior years you have not.
And do you see this throughout the region, or are we unique?
No, you are not unique, unfortunately. I'm seeing that across the state of Florida and beyond.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm happy to answer any other questions.
I just have one question. You mentioned the cost of pharmaceutical, or something regarding pharmaceuticals
Yes.
driving up costs. Is it the demand or the cost of the drugs themselves?
It's both.
Both, okay.
So specialty pharmacy specifically, so the things like you see commercials for Humira and Xeljanz, and you probably know the jingles of a lot of them, they have gotten more expensive over the years, and they have a patent for 10 years, and they've found ways to slightly modify to extend that patent. And not only that, the diagnosis categories have broadened. So Humira was originally approved to just treat rheumatoid arthritis, and now it can treat a variety of inflammatory conditions. So you're broadening who is eligible for this medication while it's also getting more expensive.
Thank you.
I just want to congratulate you, Brown & Brown, on your success. So you've got your new building down there, and you're growing by leaps and bounds. So my ask is that you help us understand the additional services that your fine organization are going to provide in the future as you grow.
Thank you for that, sir. So we are growing, and you're right, we've been able to invest heavily in employee benefits. One of the things that we are really excited about is we have a medical director that now leads our population health team. So she is Dr. Louise Short. She was an infectious disease doctor with the CDC and then has worked in many other prestigious places. So she is rolling out very timely recommendations for our population health consultants to work with me on that will directly benefit the city.
And my comment is really meant to support our relationship, because you are growing stronger, which I think lifts our bar as well. So we appreciate that.
Thank you, sir.
Any additional questions?
No.
I have one question, and it's really because my lack of knowledge in this environment. In the marketing summary, you had a bunch of different carriers that you were trying to get proposals from.
Yes.
I'm just curious, the amount that are, excuse me, unable to offer competitive solutions, it seems pretty significant, but I just want to ask you, is that pretty common? It seems like it's over 50% of the carriers said they couldn't provide.
I'm looking at which line of coverage because it depends. So
Sure, yeah.
when we're looking at life and disability, which is where most of that is, we were able to get the city a really great deal 3 years ago with the standard, and they were able to improve terms and conditions that were really unheard of in the market, and so many of the carriers said, we can't match that. Some of that is related to standards preference for public sector groups and public safety risks, whereas many of the other carriers just don't want to go into that space. Some of the other lines of coverage, if you were to see medical, for example, TPA, we have some carriers that don't have the network discount in this area. So United Healthcare, for example, is not super strong. Cigna declined to quote because they don't have Halifax right now, and that's a major hospital system. So those are some of the reasons.
Awesome, thank you very much, just so I had a little more knowledge around that. And then my second question would be, did we abut that 125% figure for this past 12-month period?
For the aggregate protection, you are close, is what I would answer. It's still to be determined, but yes, we're running close.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, ladies, thank you very much for the presentation. And we will move forward now to a resolution approving a contract with JBrown Professional Group for services regarding the comprehensive plan. And counsel, if you would read that in for me, please.
Of course, Mayor. This is a resolution for the Comprehensive Plan Update Consultant Services, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Palm Coast, Florida, approving a contract with JBrown Professional Group Inc. for professional planning services to update the comprehensive plan, authorizing the city manager or designee to execute said contract, providing for severability, providing for conflicts, providing for implementing actions, and providing for an effective date.
Well, we've been waiting. I was corrected yesterday. I have been saying that we've been waiting 22 and a half years for this to begin, and actually the comp plan was addressed in a small part in a shorter timeline ago. But so we're anxious to hear what you have to say.
Yes, sir. Sorry. Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And we're excited about this process too. We've been waiting a long time, and I know this is one of council's priorities, so we're very excited.
Good morning, Mayor, members of City Council. Jose Papa for the Community Development Department. I have sitting next to me Kathy Eboff from JB Pro Consultants. And of course, you recognize Brittany Kershaw, our Communication Marketing Manager, and Mr. Ray Tyner, our, I don't know, Deputy Chief, or is it Chief? I get confused at this point. Our Deputy Chief Development Officer. What we'd like to present to you here today is just basically the opening salvo to the update of the comprehensive plan. What we want to present to you really is the process that we intend to go through to update that comprehensive plan. As you mentioned, Mayor, the comprehensive plan was first adopted in 2004, and that was after numerous public workshops and public involvement, a robust public involvement process that went into the draft of that first comprehensive plan. Over the years, as you mentioned, there's been some minor updates to it because we're required by the state through the evaluation and appraisal report. In 2009, we did have a series of neighborhood meetings to facilitate that update, the required update of that comprehensive plan. And then in 2010, we also did another update just when we incorporated a large vast of areas west of the railroad tracks. But of course, the comprehensive plan is a living document, and in order to not let it go stale, we really need to look at it. And I think as a council priority to make sure that we continue to grow in a sustainable and resilient manner, it's important that we look at this comprehensive plan. And what I'd like to highlight with this comprehensive plan update is that it is an update that's going to be citizen-driven. It's easy for me as your senior planner to sit in my cubicle and test and adjust the policies as I see fit, but that's absent of any public input. What are their priorities? What is their vision? What is their goal for the future of this city? And we're not mind readers, so it's necessary that we move to the community and get involved with the community and get their input on that update. Sorry. No one. Yes. So today's presentation, I'd like to just briefly go over. We're going to introduce the team. We're going to look at the process keystones. And by keystones, we mean these are some of the basic foundations that would allow us to have a successful update of the comprehensive plan. And looking at those goals and next steps, which are really just the further steps that we need to take in the update of a comprehensive plan. So your team, I think this slide is very reflective of how we look at this. We're all mixed in, we're not in silos. It's not just the community development department. We have marketing and communications there, which is really probably going to be the keystone of the successful update. And we have, as part of our team, we're proposing to have JBPro as our selected consultants to provide assistance to the city. JBPro was selected after the issuance of an RF, request for qualifications. Through their written proposal and through an oral interview with a selection committee, we found that this consulting firm really embodies the vision, a similar vision and skill that we look forward to that we will need in having this successful update. So I'm going to let Kathy, who is from JBPro, to sort of go over their team.
Welcome.
Good morning, thank you. It's very exciting to be here today. We are really excited to be able to do this project for Palm Coast. The team that JBPro has assembled includes 4 consulting firm. Our firm will be the lead on it, will be the project manager, and we'll work with Calvin Giordano, the Planning Collaborative, and Access Engineering to help support our activities. And I can tell you that the team we developed is because we are a group of planners from across the state of Florida who really are dedicated to community engagement. This is what we do. This is what we love to do. They say if you do what you love to do, you never have to work in a day in your life. So we don't really work because this is our passion for planning. We look for opportunities to work with communities, to understand what a community is, to understand what their vision is. We look for citizen-driven processes because we know, as Jose just mentioned, that we can sit in an office and come up with policies and strategies, but yes, policy and strategy works for one community may not work for another community. So our team has been put together because we are planners who really look forward and look to engage the community in a discussion about what it is that they see for their future, and then develop policies that achieve that goal for the community has already established for itself. As I mentioned, this team is experienced in this type of planning. It is really what we focus on. We have done over 50 comprehensive plans collectively. We have over 100 years of experience. We are based here in Florida. All of us are. Personally, our office is in St. Augustine and Gainesville, so we have a local presence here. We understand this community. And then we work with Calvin Giordano, who's out of Miami, Access Engineering, who's out of the Western Coast, and then the Planning Collaborative, who's out of the Panhandle area. This is a little bit about us. And now I want to get into the keystones. And this is going to be a very collaborative discussion because, as mentioned, we don't look at ourselves as the consultant and the project team from Palm Coast. We look at us as kind of collaborative team effort. It's going to work because we're all going to work on this together. We're all part of the same project. We don't look at us as divisions and silos, as mentioned, but we look at us as a unified team. So you will see at any time that you'll hear different voices at the table, and that's because we're all here to talk to you a little bit about the project and provide you an understanding of what our ideas are for this effort. So we're going to start with some keystones. The first thing is the vision, and the vision helps you understand where you're going. Just like if you're going to go on a trip, you want to have a map. This is our roadmap for the future. The vision of the community and where it's going to go is really going to drive everything else in this process. It's going to establish your values and your ideals, your goals. It's going to hear each individual person's voice so that collectively we can develop a collective voice for Palm Coast. We're going to learn that our individual strengths are only stronger when we work together, and understand that each of our ideas can really be blended with other ideas to establish that common vision. It's going to be accessible, and this means that every person in Palm Coast who wants to participate in this process will have an opportunity to do so. Whether that's an online forum, whether that's a personal forum, whether that's a traditional workshop forum or a meeting like we're in today, however people are most comfortable, because everybody has a different way of accessing processes. So if we did just online, we would not be able to hear from people who are not comfortable with in-person events. If we just did in-person events, we wouldn't be able to meet the needs of people who can better achieve something online. If we do just events like this, which are formal, which some people feel very comfortable with, but other people don't feel comfortable and they want to be able to talk on a more intimate one-on-one basis. So our process will bring all of those different ideas together with different types of tools that meet the individual person wherever they are and however they're best achieved. Like I said, we have a variety of in-person events that we will do. Which ones exactly we are going to figure out in phase one. Phase one will really drive the process. We have a lot of tools in our toolboxes, but which ones meet Palm Coast? That's what we don't know yet, and that's what we're going to collaboratively work with the Palm Coast team to understand and develop. So we can do focus groups, we can do town hall meetings, we can do workshops, we can do pop-up events. We could do a little bit of all of them. That's what we have to figure out as we go through this first phase of the project, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. We're also going to do some online events, but again, which ones we're going to do and how much balance we go between in-person and online, that's what we're going to figure out through the first phase of the project. And then Brittany is going to lead some other online activities. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So as you already know, the city has a pretty robust communications program. So we'll levy those to be able to reach every person in Palm Coast who wants to be part of this process. We have great relationships with our local media, so we'll be working with them to get the word out about all of our different events and things that we have going on for the comprehensive plan. We do have relationships also with local publications, so we'll reach out to them and be able to put information in those to get it out to the public. And then we have, obviously, we can live stream many of our meetings, and some of these portable meeting kits that are kind of unique to JBPro are going to be implemented as well, because not only can we utilize the tools that we already have, but they are coming with tools of their own that'll just expand our reach.
So where do we go from here? We talk about 4 phases or 4 components of a process, but we as a team actually really struggled on this section of our presentation, because there are 4 components or 4 phases, but they're not like silos. They're gonna be interactive. They're gonna be working with each other. We're gonna be working in phase 1, and then we'll be working in phase 3. We're going to be working in phase 2, and we'll be working in phase 3. They're going to educate each other. So these phases are really more like components that overlap, so that the end result of the adoption is something that really meets the needs of Palm Coast. The community planning process is not like a traditional comprehensive plan. A traditional comprehensive plan identifies your data analysis, you review your community conditions, you assess your population growth, you look at your policies that you have in place today, and then you develop a new comprehensive plan. A vision-based comprehensive plan effort is very different. It is much more iterative. It's much more about prioritizing and evaluating and going back and forth. As you prioritize, you reevaluate. As you reevaluate, you reprioritize. As you identify keys, you identify new keys, and you're constantly listening to the community to make sure that you end up in the right place. Did you want to expand on that?
No,
Okay. So, but we do want to explain that there are 4 components because each one of them does do different things. Even though they may be working in relationship with other components at various times, they have different purposes. So our first component is the mobilizing for success. And this is the phase that we will be working on immediately upon getting our contract and moving through the September timeframe. This is the first thing we're going to do, and that is we are going to figure out what is the best fit for this community for this process. So we're going to look at all of those tools in our toolbox. We're going to talk to the city about what you've already done in the past, and we're going to figure out which tools we should bring to the table for this community at this time. Because even a process that may have worked before, you may have done some efforts that really were successful. Well, are they going to be successful for this process? That's what we're going to figure out over the next couple of months. We're also going to start building our partnerships because partnerships are really important. We're going to start a branding effort. This effort will not be called the Comprehensive Plan Update. It will be called something else. What that is, we haven't decided yet, but it will have a brand of its own that will live from now and hopefully through the implementation of this project. And above all else, it will be inclusive.
just want to add that with the first component really is, as Kathy mentioned, it's a collaborative effort between the consulting team and staff. And it's here that we're really, Kathy talked about building a roadmap. And this is where we start getting into that roadmap to make sure that we actually know where we're headed, and that as we go down that road to get to the finish line of an updated comprehensive plan, we've actually, the ideal goal of making sure that anyone who wants to be involved was able to get involved and did have a say in its update. In a way, you can also talk about as the keystone. We're going to build this foundation for updating the comprehensive plan, but if you build it with missing blocks, that is, we failed to address or talk to a group of citizens or residents, then then we've not really built a cohesive home. We've left gaps so that we might get to the finish line and we can check that box that we're getting to the finish line. But how did you get there? Did you get the right people involved to develop that plan? And I think this is why this first 2 months, the collaboration, how we reach out to our residents, what format do we reach out is very important.
Jose, just a question before you finish up. You mentioned my favorite word, collaboration. The question I have is, I do understand that a project like this is unique to the government entity that you're applying it to. However, will you also be inviting in our local neighboring municipalities and, of course, the county? Because even though the document will be unique to our city of Palm Coast, it would be obviously foolish to think that we are, on an island here. And including the folks around us obviously is important. So is that a part of the plan?
Yes, sir, absolutely is. As with, just to get technical about the comprehensive plan, there is an intergovernmental coordination element within the comprehensive plan that requires us to do that outreach. And even without that element, I think it's just a given that, given the nature of how our counties develop, as I've heard from visitors, I didn't know if I was still in Palm Coast, if I was
Sure.
down in Cork. It doesn't matter. Boundaries doesn't matter to our visitors and even to our residents.
Right.
We I
Good.
think, function as one.
And I can't resist. You have an office in Gainesville.
Yes,
So do you hail from UF, and how does that work?
I am neutral. I actually hail from Morgan State University in Baltimore. Go Bears! So I get to be neutral on all Florida schools.
But you are close to one of the finest planning schools in the world, correct?
Well, and I have with me our intern for the summer, Jenna Johnson, who is a upcoming second-year student at the Morgan.
Go Gators, thank you.
There's a Gator, but
I
I
will
get
not
to be
second that, Mayor.
neutral. Good planners get to stay
Go
in the
Knights,
middle.
too.
There we go.
So to your question of, and actually I'm glad you raised that comment, because this is what we're going to talk about in this first phase, is citizen stakeholders, is business people, is elected officials, is policy officials and staff. Everyone is going to come together not only to develop the policies and the vision for the community, but to develop the process itself. We're going to look at that toolbox and figure out how do we engage various people, and we're going to ask various stakeholders how they're best engaged with. So it's not just us who is going to figure out this process in the next couple of months, but we're going to work with your community to figure out this process and figure out which tools out of our toolbox are the best ones to develop this roadmap for the future. We're going to identify champions. Every project needs a champion. I suspect that there's some that I'm looking at right now who are ready and eager to join on our team. But we want champions from across, because when we leave and go back to our home communities, this becomes your plan. This becomes your living document. And if we leave and you don't own it, then it won't go. It'll be nothing but a plan that sits on a shelf, and we don't want that. That's not what we're here to work with you on. We're here to create a document that's a living, vibrant, living document that helps drive the initiatives and the programs that will start today and move forward into your future. So we want champions. We want them to be across the board. We want them to include board members. We want them to include citizens. We want them to include business people. We want them to include seniors. We want them to include young people. We want this community to really take ownership of this document, and they take ownership when they have an active voice and participate in the process that got them there. And then you asked if we were going to collaborate. We are going to collaborate. I have spent most of my 27-year career as a planner in the public sector. It has only been recently that I moved into the private sector, but I'm still a public sector girl at heart. I've worked for municipal governments, I've worked for county governments, I've worked for school districts, and I've worked for regional governments. And I know, because of my experience working on the public sector and working with my colleagues, that people, like Jose said, they don't care where the boundaries are. They don't know where the boundaries are. They don't know if they're on one side of the street or another side, if that's in one jurisdiction or another jurisdiction. This is their home. This is their community. They want to have a participating voice in that community. So we're going to engage in our partners. We're going to bring them all to the table. We're going to bring the school district and the local municipalities. We're going to bring the county. We're going to bring the state agencies. We're going to bring the regional partners to the table, because we understand that whatever planning document that we create, we need their help to help implement it. And as I mentioned earlier, we're going to brand this project. We're going to create a name for it that people think of. When they hear this name, they're going to think of this project. And when they hear that name, they're going to think about how they're an active participant in it, and that it's not something the city is doing, but it's something that we collectively together are doing. We are going to schedule engagement activities, again, whether they're grassroots, whether in person, whether online, or other events. We're going to have a variety of different tools, because we know that people are at best reached and best able to access a project in different ways.
And
So,
I'm sorry.
oh, go ahead.
So just before we move on to the next part, I think before we move on, that I think that what you just saw with the recent slides is just really an example of why we, as a community development department, cannot do this on our own. We need professionals. We need our communications and marketing department to really be a strong supporter of this outreach. We're probably good at, I'd like to say that we're good at what we do in terms of crafting policies and objectives, but we have staff, we have that is an expert at these outreach activities, and that's why, as we mentioned, there are no silos in this, that we're all mixed in together to create a successful update of our comprehensive plan.
So now we're going to go a little bit into detail into the other three components, not as much as we went into component one, because again, that's where we are right now. We're at the beginning of this journey together. We're figuring out where we're headed, and so we're going to detail a little bit. Jose, you want to talk a little bit about?
Sure. I think we're just going to breeze through the last couple of slides, because we're really just getting into really the process of how we get from community input and outreach to the final product, which is an update. Although we show here component 2, 3, and 4, this update is not linear, as we've mentioned before. Component 3, titled Public Outreach and Participation, that's really more of an umbrella over component 2 and 4, and actually component 1 too, in that the public outreach and participation oversees or overrides all of the steps that we need to do to get to the final product, which is an updated updated comprehensive plan. When we talk about data and analysis, well, the data is not the data might be something that we get from the census, but the data is also what the residents have told us, what we've heard as we've done our public outreach. That's data, and our job here is to look at all the data, the public outreach results, and even the statistics, and to come up with that analysis that leads us to, well, if this issue was brought up by our residents, what do we need to do to the comprehensive plan in terms of objectives and policies to address that issue? And that, again, so even when we get to the finish line, that's something that we need feedback from our residents. It's one thing to say that we've addressed it, but have we really addressed it? If we didn't come back and ask again, has this been satisfied? Or, you know, and we say satisfied as in, have we addressed it really to the full extent that we could, with not just our brains, but with the input of the community. And so I think that just covers 2, 3, and 4, and I think just kind of breeze through that, but I can't, again, this update, as we see here, the common ground vision, bringing the common ground vision into focus by integrating strong action steps into the comprehensive plan process. And that is why this presentation was really more focused on the public outreach and public engagement process, because I think that's going to drive the success of this update. And, sorry, if you have, I don't know.
No, that's it. At that, if there are any questions, we look
I do. Well, it's not a question, but I think, Jose, you were kind of repeating it at the end. I heard it weaved into the presentation. So one of the things that City Council is faced with literally on a daily basis is a comment by the community that, hey, y'all are not listening to us. You're not hearing what it is we want. You're not executing what we want you to do. We have a limited audience in these meetings, but also it happens as we are, out and about. So I just want to make sure that the consultant understands that in addition to this plan that you present today, one of the other success metrics of this plan is that our community must now feel that they are being listened to, every one of them. So I know that's a giant task, but that is the engine inside of this program. So I want to make sure that you're on board with that task.
That's a central part of the reason that we do this. We don't do this so that we can hear ourselves talk. We do this so that we can understand, and you only understand when you listen.
Good. And just finally for me, when you said living document, so the deliverable on this plan is something that the city will then have as an asset to build on and fine-tune, not having to recreate the entire project again. And I would think for decades to come, it becomes the blueprint for the long-term future.
Yes, sir. It's going to be a 2050 plan.
Questions for City Council?
You just said what I was about to say, so I appreciate it.
I have a few questions. So in the contract itself on pages 5 and 7, it talks about the amount of times that you all plan on meeting with us as representatives and then also presenting during workshops or meetings, whatever it may be. candidly, the number seems a little low, and I only say that because I understand you all will be out in the community, but I also think the community needs to see the deliverables on a more consistent basis, so kind of updating us and getting in touch with us and what we're hearing from our constituents. So if it's possible to increase that, even if it's only, I think the contract read roughly 2 hours per representative for this entire process, and to me, that's very little.
So that section is just in the phase one. That's just part, that section that you're specifically referencing is the section that deals with the, that first, let me go back. The mobilizing for success, that building partnerships, that understanding what it is that you want out of this process. It's not the entire project. There'll be other touch points with you as we go through it to update you as to what is happening. Your staff will have the opportunity as well to bring these forward on a regular basis. The section that you're specifically referencing is just that initial touch with you, it's not the entire.
That's good. I'm glad you clarified that because the contract reads a little bit differently. And then I guess this would be communications, working in conjunction with communications. Brittany, how often we kind of get an update as to what the research is showing from JBPro. I thank you guys for the presentation and for the collaboration. I think it's really important that our residents stay very involved in this. The other question I had was, who determines, or at what point are we kind of dictating who our quote-unquote stakeholders are, and how is that determined? Just so that we make sure, as you were, to your point, Mr. Papa, that we're not really leaving any sector, faction of our residents out.
I believe the obvious ones are the ones that, we have frequent communication with, but there are, stakeholders, and we don't know where they are at this point. And so maybe, the intentions that we're going to have a kickoff meeting that essentially the entire community will be invited to. And it's at that point that, and this is more traditional in terms of outreach, that we get a database of who attended the meetings and who was there that might have an interest in following and continuing with this process. Again, building on that initial touch point, as Kathy has mentioned, and creating that communication line with them so that they do stay involved. And as I've seen in previous updates, that usually it just takes that one person who, well, my friend has a neighborhood watch in their community, and before you know, we've expanded the outreach that we've had from just one person attending a meeting to a different set of people who, for whatever reason, might not have been able to attend. But that's just one example.
Yeah, because I think, what I want to make sure we're doing, being that this is so important, is that we're not listening to an echo chamber. I want us to reach as many people as possible. And we see a lot of the same faces, and I'm appreciative for the residents that continue to show up. But for something that's so important, I'm really hoping that this outreach can be particularly widespread and that we can make sure we're reaching everybody possible. And obviously, it takes community involvement, right? We can't make people answer us, but whatever you all can do to make sure that we're not just hitting those same people that are continuously engaged.
Yes, ma'am. And I believe that's why the different tools that we have, whether it's online engagement or actual person-to-person engagement, is very important, as Kathy mentioned before. People have different comfort levels for engagement and participation, and our goal is to make it as comfortable and for everyone to participate if they want to participate. I guess it's a bigger phrase there.
Certainly. Thank you guys again for the presentation.
Questions or comments before?
I have a comment. Thank you, Mayor, for your comments. Thank you, Councilmember Pontieri, for your comments. I am totally in agreement with both of your comments. And also, I'd like to thank you for the presentation. I think that it was a very well presented presentation. However, I would like to make sure that once we get into this process, that we do give a lot of attention to outreach to the community, because that is what is very important at this time. So thank you so much for your presentation.
For sure. 2 comments, actually 1 comment, 1 question. I would be remiss if we didn't talk about the late great Mayor Netz with his saying of, if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there, right? And that's something that stuck with me over the years. And my question would be, do the demographics of our city and our county make this unique in a way that you haven't experienced before? I'm just wondering, our older demographic, is that a little bit outside the niche of what is traditional, and have you experienced and been successful in a community like this before?
So every community is unique. Every community has its own, you can go to somewhere and you can go, you know, this reminds me of, but it's not that place. It's Palm Coast. So that's why we do our first phase is the mobilizing, because we really want to understand the community and we want to work with your community to figure out what the best way to work with it is. It would be amiss of us for us to come in with a prepackaged, canned community engagement effort that we've used somewhere else, because somewhere else is not here. So, I mean, yes, these are tools that we have seen that have worked, but I can tell you, and as we were working on this presentation, I was thinking, you know, 30 years ago, this was the best way to communicate. Today, we have different tools. So, and it evolves, and what we think we're going to do today may not be what we end up doing. I mean, this process will continue to educate itself, even at the end of our first effort, where we really have a better understanding of the schedule and the tools, and we can communicate to you how we're going to move this forward. We know that we're going to be learning throughout the process. We're going to try something and it's not going to work exactly the way we want to, or we're not reaching all the people that we want to. So we're going to have to pivot. We're going to have to think about something different. We're going to have to bring something different to the table. So we would be wrong to tell you that today what we're going to do is exactly where we end up, because this process is going to teach itself. We're going to learn through this process. We're going to figure out what's best, because in the end, what's really important to us is that we do reach everyone who wants to participate, that we do listen to people, that they do feel that they've been heard. You can't engage in a vision, you can't believe in a vision if you didn't have a participation in that, creating that vision. That isn't your vision unless you've had a role in it. So that's what we're going to go through. That's why this is going to be unique to Palm Coast. That's why we're not here today presenting to you what the process is going to be, because we really need to learn more before we're able to tell you that.
All right, understood. Thank you very much.
So, Councilman, I have to use your reference, so, from our former mayor. So it sounds to me like we're making a, not directional, but a right turn. And, you know, this is truly, seriously now, this is a transition point from the past, looking forward to the future. So that's the level we perceive this project to be. This will blueprint and dictate our future for generations to come. So I can't think of anything more important or a bigger responsibility on the shoulders of this council. So do a good job.
We're excited and ready to get started, sir.
Very good. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you for the time.
Thank you.
I think we now would like to welcome our Honorable Supervisor of Elections, Ms. Katie Lenhart, to, are you making a presentation or we're making the presentation? Okay. But let me acknowledge that you have come to visit with us, and thank you for your patience today.
She's supervising.
What's that?
She's supervising.
Yes.
You said honorable, and I was like, what is he talking about? I'm doing the presentation.
That's a constitutional office. That's honorable.
Not me. I don't care. Okay, while we're setting this up, I'm going to read the ordinance into the record. So this is agenda item number 4. It's an ordinance regarding initiative and referendum, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Palm Coast, Florida, pursuant to Article 9, General Provisions of the City Charter, adopting processes and procedures for recall, citizen initiative, and referendum, providing procedures for petition, and organizing a political committee, providing for a required number of signatures, form and content of petitions, and statement of circular, providing for petition verification by the Supervisor of Elections, providing for action on the petition by the City Council and submission to electors, providing for initiative and referendum election results, providing for conflict, severability, codification, and an effective date. So City Council members, we're here today because let me give you a little bit of history. So last year we were approached by a citizen that was interested and utilizing the petition process. This petition process was able to be put together through going through the charter, through the statutes, and multiple different statutes. So to be able to provide the process to the citizen, we had to grab from multiple different documents to put it together. It all exists in law already somewhere, either state law or our charter, but it's in all different places. And we didn't have a one-stop shop where someone could come in and say, hey, what's your process? Oh, here it is. Here's the process and procedure all laid out in the same place. So what we did was said, well, you know, we can put this together now and be compliant with all the regulations that we have to comply with, but in the future, we should really have a process that sets out in the code that brings all these things together and allows for people to just go and see and sets timeframes so we're all on the same page. And so we can engage a supervisor of elections and make this a smooth process and everybody knows what their duties are and it's clear. So that's why we're here today. So this has been a process that's been ongoing for 8 months now, just developing, going through the statutes, developing the process, going back and forth with the supervisor of elections, drafting the ILA, which is the next item on the agenda, which I'm going to present with this item. And so it's been a process in the making, and now here we are today, and I'm going to be presenting it to you with Virginia, who helped out with this whole process. So as I said before, these are the charter and some of the statutory provisions where it establishes the process of initiative and referendum. The charter, Article 9, Section 3, establishes the process. It states that 10% of the city electorate can petition the city council to propose an ordinance, require reconsideration of an existing ordinance, or propose a charter amendment. Those are the 3 options that you can do under the charter with the petition process. The Florida statute, Section 166, also provides a process that the city can use. It kind of touches on, it mirrors the city charter and adds a couple more additional procedural layers. So the section, and this is a different section of the statute, the other thing that's included in this ordinance is just the procedure for recall, which is also through a petition process. This is already set out in the Florida statutes. It has a different procedural threshold for recall, so, and it gives you the only grounds that are allowed for recall, which is set forth in the statute. So what we did in the ordinance was just say, you can recall through this petition process below, as per this statute, in reference to statute. So for the initiative and referendum process, these are 2 a little different things that we talk about. For the initiative process, the city electors have the power to initiate ordinance. That's where the word initiative process comes from, including those that seek to amend the charter. This is accomplished, as I said, through a petition process, which we'll get into. But you cannot propose petitions on certain items by statute, and those are concerning the budget, taxes or assessments, debt obligations, CPI, rezonings, and there are other matters that are prohibited by law for a petition process. It's the same with referendum. The same items have the same limitations, but a referendum is for reconsideration. So this would be if within 60 days of an ordinance or measure passed by the city council, electors have the power to require reconsideration by the city council, and they would do that through the following petition process. So the first step in the petition process is to register as a political committee. This is a new section of the statute. As I said, we're up to 3 now, and the charter. You have to register as a political committee pursuant to section 106.03, and that's with the city clerk. You file an affidavit with the city clerk that includes a ballot summary and title. It can only include 1 subject. That's the law on that. And then the city clerk will issue the petition forms to the political committee for signature gathering. And these petitions must be signed by 10% of the total number of qualified electors in the city. That's set forth in the charter. Once those petitions are all signed, they are submitted to the Supervisor of Elections with a statement of circular that basically says, hey, I'm the person that passed this petition around, and what's on here is, these are the signatures I gathered, and what's on here is true. The Supervisor of Elections then has 60 days to verify the signatures after the receipt. There's also a fee associated, a statutorily set fee for this in the election code that the supervisor will implement while reviewing these signatures. And then after the signatures are verified, the city council, then it comes back, the supervisor election lets us know, and it would come to city council through a regular public hearing process to consider the initiative or reconsideration of whatever ordinance or measure that may be up for referendum. And then it moves through the public hearing process like normal. If the city council fails to adopt or enact the ordinance or reverse the measure after reconsideration within 60 days after the petitions are verified, then the measure is submitted to the electors at the next general election. Charter amendments are required to go to referendum vote anyway, so those are sent to the electors regardless.
So, a quick question.
Sure.
Just when you say if city council fails to adopt or act on the ordinance, so the city council can bring it up for another vote and shoot it down again?
Yep.
And that ends it, right?
Right, or not bring it up, and it would just go straight to the ballot
Right, by
at that point.
not acting, it goes straight.
Yes.
But acting in any form would put an end to it going on a ballot. Is that correct?
No, if,
No.
the only end to it going on the ballot would be if you pass the measure that the petition was brought. Okay, unless it's a charter amendment, it still has to go. But say, for example, when someone brought an ordinance up and you thought, oh, you know, the city citizens want it, we think it's a good idea, we're gonna pass it. If it passes, it doesn't have to go on the ballot.
Okay, thanks.
So to meet the deadline, so these are considered at general elections. That's what it's set forth in the charter. So they can be considered every time there's a general election. To meet the deadline for the next general election, so next year in 2024, the petition forms have to be submitted to the supervisor elections prior to April 1st of the general election year, and that's because, you know, we need time for the supervisor to verify the elections, then it has to go through the public hearing. We have that 60-day time frame that has to occur, and then we have to have time to get it back to the supervisor elections, and they have to get it on the ballot. So April 1 is the deadline in the general election year, April 1st of the general election year. And then as far as the supervisor of election goes, they must make the copies of the proposed or referred ordinance or measure available at the polls. And as far as withdrawal of the petition, that can be done anytime prior to the primary election without cost. But after this time, there would be an administrative cost to pull it after that. That would be paid by the political committee. If the political committee decides to withdraw the petition for some reason at that point, it'd be pretty late in the game. And there'd be some costs incurred to remove that from the ballot. So as far as results, if a petition ends up going onto the ballot, for initiatives, if a majority of the qualified electors voting on a proposed initiative ordinance voted its favor, then it should be considered adoption upon certification of the election results. And it's the same standard for referendum. It's a majority of the qualified electors voting. Okay, so that's the ordinance in a nutshell and the procedure. If anybody has questions on that,
I do.
Yes.
Okay, do you have to raise your budget on this? Okay. So Counselor, I have to ask you a question, and I don't want to sound negative, but my first impression on this is, so the city of Palm Coast has worked through 23 years, almost a quarter of a century without this. The question is this a solution looking for a problem? I'm not sure I understand the energy or the fuel behind the need to do this.
Right. So as I said before, almost everything I've told you, with the exception of few procedural dates like the April 1 date and the statement of circular, things like that are not necessarily required by an existing statute. But by count, there are probably no less than 6 to 7 statutes and the charter that go into putting this process together. So when we were looking to do this, like I said before, last year, we were drawing from all these different places, trying to provide a procedure to the citizens in one place that says, okay, here's a procedure, everybody's got to be on the same page. We already have the requirement to do this. This, as I said before, is just a roadmap, an easily accessible roadmap for people to read through it. And so staff and the supervisor elections were all on the same page from how the time frames, I should say, works, when things come in, when they have to be in by, when review periods are. It's really establishing that and our collaboration with the supervisor of elections who helped us put this ordinance together. We worked very closely with her.
So, don't take offense, but so this is the referendum for dummies version, the short book.
Oh, well, yeah, I mean, I'm happy we have it, so, yeah, it's a lot less stress for me.
You have more to do, so I'll wait and ask the supervisor if she has any comments at the end.
Right, so, as you know, this ordinance, as we said before, lists our procedures, so we wanted to make sure that we memorialized our relationship with the supervisor of elections as it comes to processing these. So we drafted an interlocal agreement with them, and basically what the interlocal agreement does is just take the duties for each party from the ordinance and puts them in agreement, so everybody knows what they need to do. You know, we know we're the ones that register the political committees. We work with the supervisor of elections in doing that and letting them know when this occurs. We provide the petition forms. We notify them if we receive any so they can start preparations in their office. How the city council, how the ordinance goes through, if the petitions are verified, you know, we keep them updated. So these are all our duties. And then the supervisor of elections duties, which is to verify petitions, certify them, and get the measure on the ballot and follow anything in the election code when it's taken from that point on. So it's got standard terms. We can cancel within 60 days. There's no money passed on either side. It's not a monetary thing. As I said, they're already required to verify these petitions and can implement a fee, a statutory fee, so that'll be charged to the political committee. So there's no money changing hands or anything like that. This is just memorializing each entity's duties. So that is agenda item number 5, the interlocal agreement.
So I would, and Katie, I'm not going to make you get up, but I mean, a thumbs up. Obviously, you're, okay, thank you.
Hello, Mayor, Council. Katie Linhart, Supervisor of Elections. Yeah, this has been great. We do need a process. And your question was, why for 23 years do we have nothing and all of a sudden we're doing this? Well, it was required by the charter to adopt an ordinance. And when you didn't have one, it was giving me a lot of stress. It was difficult to, like she was saying, all over the statute are different. There is no local initiative process in Florida state law, okay? So they have the constitutional amendments, and that's great, but that doesn't apply to you all. And I can't charge an actual cost for the verification of those petitions because it's a local measure. So it's because there was no process. Yeah, I lost a little bit of sleep. I don't have gray hair yet, but it was stressful because we had to bring all those things together and come up with a plan. So I love this process, and it's been great to work with Virginia and Nace on this. They've done a great job. She did say 8 months. I think that's accurate. I feel like we've been working on this for a year, but it's finally ready for your review, and hopefully, you know, I'm here to answer any questions. I think that it's pretty solid. But,
Great.
I mean,
I'm very happy to hear that and appreciate your, you know, your input in getting this to a finish line. City Council, any specific questions for the
I just wanna
Supervisor of
say-
Elections?
I just want to say thank you all for getting this together.
Good.
Thank you.
Yes, I'll echo that. I think that part of the problem with the law just generally is that it's inaccessible to citizens, and so this is making it more accessible and more understandable. So I commend your work on this and think it's long overdue, so thank you very much.
Councilperson?
Thank you for your presentation. I have no questions. Good job.
Excellent. Thank you very much for the presentation and the collaborative efforts. My question would be, these petitions that have to be collected for 10% of the electorate to get on the ballot, these are all physical, real, tangible petitions, right? Is there there's no means for this to be digitized or anything like that, where I know this question will come up from the resulting news articles that will arise from this, but there's no online petition or anything that would qualify for this level of putting anything on a ballot, right?
We're all shaking our heads no.
Okay.
The reason is because in state law, it requires a physical signature, and even further than that, the administrative rulemaking requires a physical signature on paper. We have to verify the paper. So, I mean, it would be nice, and actually during COVID, there was an exception to that. There was an executive order passed by the governor that allowed candidates to collect their petitions electronically, and that has expired and has not been renewed.
Understood. Yeah, I just think that's a big impediment for collecting all of these. So I appreciate all the hard work and thank you for the answers.
Nick, you may even remember on DSDE 104, you even have to have that black outline.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're going to have that black outline as well on the petition as well.
Katie, thank you for answering the questions.
Of course.
I just have one more question based off that, and I appreciate you bringing that up, Councilman Clufus. Is there anything that we can do to kind of insulate ourselves from a potential change in the guard, so to speak, at the state level that would allow electronic signatures so that we could keep physical here?
That would be a legislative issue. Potentially during rulemaking, I don't think that the state is going to be moving on the petition rule anytime soon. They have a lot of work to do with our recent Senate Bill 7050 that was passed and signed by the governor. It should be effective July 1st, and they have to update probably 10 rules related to that, and one of them is definitely not petition signatures. So I would say contact your representatives.
Okay, thank you.
Contact our representative quickly.
Yes. Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you. All right,
I'm
so
just gonna-
we're going on to the next item now?
Yeah, I'm just gonna,
Go
for
ahead, read it in.
housekeeping purposes, I'm gonna read in the resolution title for the ILA, but we've already discussed it. A resolution regarding an interlocal agreement, initiative, and referendum process. A resolution of the City Council of the City of Palm Coast, Florida, approving the terms and conditions of an interlocal agreement with the Flagler County Supervisor of Election for initiative and referendum processes, authorizing the mayor to execute said agreement, providing for severability, providing for conflicts, providing for implementing actions, and providing for an effective date.
And there's no term, in other words, any party can withdraw at their pleasure?
Yes, 60 days, no cause needs to be given.
Any questions about the agreement piece?
No.
Very good. Thank you, ladies, and thank you
all.
for 8 months of hard hair coloring work. We now move on to, wow. Which part of the show this is? The presentation for backyard chickens.
I thought Nasa was trying to escape as well, just slide out with him.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. Barbara Grossman, Code Enforcement Manager for the City of Palm Coast. Today's subject is backyard chickens. You asked that we bring this to City Council, so we're here to give our presentation. We're here today to discuss the backyard chickens. There have been multiple requests from residents at City Council, as well as a resident has become a political action committee to allow backyard chickens.
How appropriate.
Just after the last, yes. City Council requested the city manager address backyard chickens at a workshop, and here I am, or here we are. Staff reviewed 10 other county/city ordinances and regulations on backyard chickens. The push for backyard chickens is not new. It's been around Central Florida for at least 10 years. The city of Orlando conducted a pilot program into backyard chickens, and it was successful, so they codified regulations for backyard chickens. Their pilot program began with 50 permits and the encouragement of their staff to participate as well. Excuse me. Once codified, it went to 100 permits allowed in certain districts with regulations. They have not reached the 100 permits, and employees are not included in the total count of the 100 permits. Per the UF study conducted, there are many benefits to having backyard chickens as well as negative impacts. The university's research conducted on backyard chickens provided the following benefits: self-sufficient, quality eggs, reduction of lawn pests, free from chemicals and pesticides, better tasting and healthier eggs, cost efficiencies, and more active lifestyle. Staff will have additional information tools for compliance of existing violations, as well as educational opportunities for residents. Currently, backyard chickens are not allowed in Palm Coast. Some risks and negative impacts per UF study are more predators of residential yards, for example, raccoons, coyotes, snakes, etc. Conditions could be unhealthy and unsanitary, a possible bird flu or some type of other disease in that family, a public nuisance for neighbors, rogue chickens and noise issues, they're wandering freely, and potential impacts to animal control for additional officers, administrative staff, complaints, and increases in costs. Staff reached out to multiple of the departments, and the effects would mostly fall on building and zoning and code enforcement divisions. There would be no effects on the quality of water nor the swales. For building, and we did check with those departments. For building and zoning divisions, there would be an increase in permit and site plan reviews. For code enforcement, there would be an increase of code complaints, violations, attorney costs, hearing officer costs, and administrative staff costs. And then, of course, my bifocals won't work on these, and I have a little bit of vertigo, so that's why I keep looking down. Okay. 7 out of the 10 require permits for those in single-family residential areas, agricultural classes and manure classes, essentially learning how to raise your chickens and to maintain your chickens. No roosters or male hens are allowed, and I did confirm because I asked what's the difference between a rooster and a male hen. There is no difference, but for some reason in a lot of the municipalities they did have that, so I put it in. The only reason you can have your chickens is for personal use. There is no selling of eggs. There's no fighting of chickens. There's no slaughtering or breeding allowed. They must, I repeat, must be contained in a coop, and it's an approved coop, and a fence enclosure screened from neighboring properties. And most municipalities, with the exception of one, had a maximum of 4 chickens per property. 4 out of the 10 require minimum setbacks, have a lot size. 2 out of the 10 do not allow chickens. 1 out of the 10 imposed a noise ordinance and regulated no chickens in community gardens. 1 out of the 10 requires a permit, has zoning and setbacks, and requires coops. Flagler Beach and Vero Beach considered backyard chicken programs, and both commissions declined to allow. The current chicken in coops, there are current chickens in coops within the city of Palm Coast, which are all in violation of city code. As you can see on the one picture to the left, and hopefully it's to the left of you too, it's a free-range chicken on 95 that we received a call, please come get the chicken. And it wasn't why did the chicken cross the street? And there, we did get the chicken, and there he is in living color, getting ready to. We work with the Humane Society right now, but we also work in communications with farms, just as we do with rescues for other animals to try to get them relocated, or give it the responsibility of the property owner or of the owner of the chicken to find a new location. These are current violations within the city, which are called into City of Palm Coast, that are their next door neighbors' chicken coops. Here are some of the more current violations, and as you can see is this one. If you look in the middle picture, the coop is in the front yard. As you see, it has no door. So then you find out the chickens are free roaming and they move over to the side of the house. Then you also see on the other side, on the right-hand side, where we can have sanitary issues. Also, issues can go forward with, my dog would say, what's that next door? And as you can see, then you have the other coop that's so low to the ground there that predators can get to it. In this case, this is exactly what happened. They tried, which these slats are not approvable, but the coop is down on the ground and the dog next door is barking in violation constantly more than 20 minutes because he knows what's on the other side of the fence. So there is a domino effect sometimes if you don't know how to responsibly take care of chickens. Okay. Here's another coop that we have in Palm Coast. And here's some samples of chicken coops that are acceptable in other municipalities. And as you can see, this one here is right from our Tractor Supply store in Palm Coast, which is showing that they have their exercise area and they have their, so they're protected from the outdoor weather. Here's another type of coop on the other side. It's a little larger.
Barbara, can I interrupt you there for a second?
Yes, sir.
So it's my understanding, because I'm a fairly regular customer over there at Tractor Supply, that they sell chicken coops, they sell chicken feed, but they don't sell chicks.
I haven't seen chicks.
No, they don't.
Oh, they don't?
Nope.
Well, thank you.
I just can't quite figure out that marketing strategy.
Yeah, but they wait till your child brings it home from the agricultural center where you went for the rodeo. Then you have to go out and get the chicken coop and chicken feed. But yes, they do. Yes, thank you for that information. Then they have another type, and this type here is what they call portable, where you can move it around. I mean, that's a rather large one, but they have smaller ones too. But portable so that you can relocate your manure and you can keep your grass from all dying, so it kind of moves around the yard. That works in some cases, but in some cases it won't, because you won't have the setbacks that are required in a lot of municipalities. And then also, like as I said, in some of the municipalities, they actually have a manure program so that there isn't a public nuisance, hence odor and that.
So the manure is beneficial to the ground cover and grass or not?
It can be in some cases, in other cases, no. But because of the manure the way it is, it's better than using a pesticide, so they will move it around the properties. And then we also have another type of coop, a nice metal roof and a little area to be able to move around in. And this is another one that we got from the University of Florida.
That's the best looking do-it-yourself coupe I've ever seen in my entire life. I mean, that's got accents on it and everything.
This one is smaller, and in some of my research, I think to have 6 chickens, which nobody has, is a 4x8, pen. But of course, then you have to consider the exercise area and everything that the chicken needs. And again, these are another type of coops, a little bit different.
Open floor plan.
Very nice. Put a couple mirrors in there.
Just different designs, different styles. These here are less than $300. And then of course there are height restrictions in a lot of the areas, so the one on the left probably would have to reduce down because the height is a little bit too high. And then, of course, again, the other one on the other side, it depends on how much property you have, where you're located. And again, all of these municipalities do not govern any homeowners associations. Okay, so, yes.
Well, I'm sorry, that was.
They don't govern any homeowners associations, so if somebody were to call code to say that there are backyard chickens within, you know, they take care of their own backyard chickens. So the options that you have are to develop a pilot program, to revise codes to allow backyard permits for all residential zoning districts, or keep the code as is. The sources that we got this information from was the University of Florida, studying raising backyard chickens for eggs, Municode, excuse me, for the municipalities and for the county and city ordinance. Reports were done in gardens in front of yards, chickens in backyards, and living lawnmowers, and report on urban farming. And we also used some blog articles from the newspapers concerning community gardens and chickens. Like I said, the city of Orlando does not allow chickens in gardens.
So Barbara, I just want to say, I have to thank you for a rather masterful but balanced presentation, and yet another example of listening to the public when they come in and talk. So the turnaround time on this has been quite spectacular, so I want to thank you and your department, because this is an example of the public coming, and we are listening carefully. But I will have to lend this to the chicken champion, Councilperson Pontieri, to kind of lead the discussion for City Council on this, if you would.
Sure, thank you, Mayor. So I want to echo his gratitude. I appreciate this. I'm obviously in favor of an ordinance allowing backyard chickens with, I think, what we see are the very common requirements, which is on page 116 of the packet. I don't remember what slide it was, but it said comparison results 7 out of 10 require the following. So I would definitely advocate to my colleagues up here on the dais that those be requirements that we look to. Whether or not we look at other setback requirements or other items that are on page 115 of the packet that list some other requirements that cities have considered, I think is what we kind of have to determine from up here. I'm an advocate of, if you own your home and it's not a nuisance or you're not conducting anything illegal, that you should have great discretion as to what occurs in your home. So I think that this is a step in that direction, and being that a municipality like Orlando does it, I don't think it's unreasonable that Palm Coast is considering this. There's incredible benefits to backyard chickens, so I really hope that council looks closely at this and that we have a robust discussion on how we can regulate it in a responsible way. So thank you again.
If I may, and I'm not disagreeing with you in any way. However, I do want to continue the discussion because I do sense a door opening here, and I want to make sure that we have a thorough discussion, before this comes to a business meeting and we vote. And there may be some additional research necessary, but if I don't love chickens or eggs are not my specialty, what I'm concerned about would be if I go to the 4-H and the FFA programs, we've got rabbits, pigs, goats, steers, and heifers, but all of those larger breeds come in mini sizes as well. In addition to that, we've got, obviously, horses I mentioned, minis, burros, sheep, cattle, rabbits, chickens we already talked about, ducks, geese, pigs, goats, ostriches, and of course our friends, the emus. So my concern, which is just something that we'll have to discuss, is, in my mind anyway, this is somewhat precedential, and are we willing to consider all of these animals as a group? Are we able, and council, maybe you'll have to help me with this, I don't need the answer right now, are we able to single out the one concept of chicken, because that was what was brought forward, but if we're going to do this, we'll do it right, and we'll talk through all of it.
Certainly, Mayor, and I thought about that as well, and actually the initial thing that brought my attention to what I really think is an ordinance change that's necessary is the fact that rabbits are listed. I know there's probably plenty of kids out there in Palm Coast who have plenty of rabbits as pets, and technically they're in violation of the code, which I think that needs to be amended anyways. So I would say that we can certainly single out certain animals without it becoming a slippery slope, so to speak.
Yeah.
And if I may say so, with rabbits, to that being said, we do have pocket pets, and we do take bunnies over to the Humane Society. Sometimes they may be wild, you know, 'cause we don't normally get into wildlife, but of course we're not leaving a baby bunny on the side of the road. We have had an incident, just so you're aware of, that we did have a huge, I almost want to say rabbit mill in a house. So, you know, so that's where we have to be careful at. But we do take pocket pets, and they're pretty much all of them that can fit into a cage, you know, whether it be somebody just recently let their guinea pigs go. And how are they going to survive in the wild? Fortunately, my staff did really well and caught 2 guinea pigs. So.
And I appreciate animal control as well, very much. They do a great job in Palm Coast.
Thank you.
Yeah.
They do an excellent job.
Vice Mayor?
So I do have some questions for you, Barbara. If we were to allow chickens in backyards and code enforcement gets a complaint from a neighbor that the conditions are unsanitary or whatever, the coops aren't where they're supposed to be, code enforcement cannot go into a backyard uninvited, correct? Or would they be able to under this ordinance?
Well, under this ordinance, there are a lot of municipalities under the permit that do require you to enter their property, to allow you to enter their property. If you're asking me as of right now, with any kind of violation, if we receive a violation, the complainant can invite us onto their property.
They can invite you on, but if they said, no, you can't come on my property, what would be?
I would not, I'd have to get a court order in order to get on their property, but a lot of the municipalities actually have it where code enforcement has, animal control has entry onto their property.
I think you brought up something about dogs too, possibly dogs barking because of the chickens next door,
yes,
creating a lot of noise. Then a neighbor complains that the dog is barking when in fact the actual effect is really the chickens.
And that's what's happening now. So what happens is, because we don't allow chickens at this time, we cite the owner of the people that have the chickens because they have a farm animal on a single family.
Right, but if we approve this and allowed chickens, then people with dogs would have to deal with their dogs barking at the chicken and find some way to calm them down.
And that'd be something you all would be talking about
Right.
as...
So that's a concern. Also, I just wonder, and I know we have 2 folks involved in real estate here on this council, is would allowing chickens in backyards increase the value of our properties or decline the values of our properties? And I think that's something we need to think about.
We'll have to check the price of eggs.
Huh? Yeah.
We'll have to check the price of eggs.
Exactly. But home prices concern me. And, you know, my concern would be putting my house on the market, and to the left and right of me are chickens, and a lot of potential buyers saying, I don't want to live next to chickens. That, to me, is something I think we need. And I see the councilwoman shaking her head. She's a real estate agent. But that would be a concern to all of our...
It's an interesting question. You know what? We have resources with the Florida Realtor Association. We could ask and see
even
what comment
Flagler,
back.
Yeah, even FCAR.
Yep.
But I think that's something we should run by the real estate community, because you know, when it's time to sell your home for whatever reason, or your children to sell it for you if you're dead, you don't want, well, hey, you don't want that to hurt the value of your bank. You're basically your largest.
Wasn't that Harry Truman that said a chicken in every pot?
Yeah, no, and actually it was
Before that, right?
Yeah. Herbert, no, it was, I don't remember.
I think it was Harry Truman. But
You're older than me, I think. But, oh, I'm sorry, were you going to comment on something I said?
No, previously, as far as getting access to the home for
Yes.
inspections. So if you were to go down the route and implement like a permitting process, which I would advise that you do, so you can have the setbacks, as part of that permit issuance, a condition would be to allow for periodic inspections of, you know, the coop and how you're supposed to have it set up, the cleanliness, the sanitary conditions of it. And so by getting that permit, they would have to agree to allow code enforcement on. And then if they didn't agree, that could be grounds for revocation.
Right, that to me seems very important. But also, you know, my own personal feelings right now is this is not Mayberry RFD. This is a community of residential homes. And for all of these reasons, I just find this to be a little too much to push on our residents. If you wanted, if we were serious about looking into this, this should be something that's on a ballot. This should be something our entire community votes on, not just us. Because, you know, if the whole community came back and said, yes, we want chickens, then fine, we do the will of the people. But I don't think for us to just decide this is,
Sure.
is
Well,
something
let
we
me,
should do.
and
But
also,
I would go further in saying this. I brought this up on the radio, WNZF, a few weeks ago when I was on with the chicken people. You know, I think our city, I know we have lots of available pieces of property we don't use, and we might be able to set something up that allow these folks to form an organization, form a nonprofit, and have a place where folks who want to have chickens could have chickens. They, of course, would have to, you know, manage it themselves, finance it themselves. You know, we would have no liability of it. But I think that might be sort of a community chicken garden, which might actually expand to even a community garden situation, which I've seen in larger cities across this country. When I lived in Atlanta, they had a big community garden set up. So that might be a compromise.
so perhaps the basis for a future motion. Please let me correct myself.
Sure.
So I can be historically accurate. It was, in fact, you're correct, Herbert Hoover, who said a chicken in every pot. It was Harry Truman, after the presidency, said that if he traveled the country after he was finished with his term, he would have a chicken dinner at every residence around the country.
And let me correct myself, as much as I hate to say this, I'm actually older than you.
I would like to make a comment. I love eggs, but I also love this community. I really do believe that having chickens in backyards here in Palm Coast will create a nuisance. I think that it'll create a lot of pushback from residents that do not want chickens next door to them. It will also increase responsibility of code enforcement, having to go out, and I just think that it's going to create a domino effect, because once we bring in chickens, then we have the possibility of individuals wanting to bring in other animals, and I don't want to see farms in backyards.
Councilman?
Absolutely. I think this is a really great discussion. I want to say thank you for bringing all this information forward, especially the neighboring MSAs and how they handle the situation. So a little background, in New York, we had chickens. We had 20 golden ladies and a rooster, and we had, you know, a bunch of acreage, and there were dogs and the neighbors' dogs and the coyotes that lived down at the, you know, fox den at the bottom of the road. So all of these issues that we're talking about, I kind of have experienced at one level or another, and they're all very legitimate. But also all the positives as well, having access to fresh eggs like that, having 20 golden ladies, we were trying to give the eggs away at that point. And I see that this was, most of the regulations around here limited to 4 and such. It is a different area around here where you can't have free range per se, but that's not necessary for chickens to be happy and be successful. Now, with that being said, I do not foresee just allowing chickens in the city of Palm Coast. And I don't think that's something that would be overall beneficial. But I think in the scope of this, if we're looking at like a pilot program where we can just have these individuals with the request to come forward for these chickens, I've been advocating, you know, for an extended period of time. They spent hours in here with us. And I feel like that deserves recognition to the point where if we create a pilot program and it's very rigid and, you know, if you want to call it, what do they call that? And the previous administration, you know, checking individuals who are migrating, but we make it very vigorous so that these individuals are, you know, it's a process that is not really, unless you really want these chickens, you're not going to go through it. And that's what I fear, that we would open up the doors for everyone to have chickens, and that's kind of how we get into the situation where, you know, degradation of real estate values and things like that. But at the same time, if we have a handful of people who are so adamant, if we create a very elaborate pilot program that is very rigid, gets rid of the vampire rules for code enforcement where they don't have to invite you onto the backyard, you know, you're allowed to go back there. That's what I mean by vampire rules. You have to invite us onto the backyard.
So is this a citizenship program for chickens in Palm Coast?
Is there such a chicken for Palm?
Is there a path?
Is there a path for chickens? Oh yeah, good question. But I think we have to respect the citizens who do come forward and put a ton of energy into things like this, but we have to make sure that it doesn't impact the surrounding areas and keep it isolated, and at least try to experience it firsthand to see the impacts it would have on our community, because without really having at least, a small sample data, and of course the individuals who are against or in violation of code right now, I mean, that was not ideal at all. If we had that in the backyards of everyone agrees up here, that's not great at all. But I think that there could be a potential to have a handful of people that have advocated so hard because they are great at maintaining chickens, they're not a problem with their neighbors, and they live in an area for whatever reason that their neighbors are okay with it. I think there may be a path in that regard, but I'm in agreement with, I think, the majority of our council that we can't just open the door to having chickens across the board. But I think there's potentially something where if it was very rigorous and we allow people like this to have applications put in that we can review as a council and perhaps even individually approving them, that's the way that I could see something like this being potentially brought forward. But besides that, my opinion is that I wouldn't like to see Palm Coast turn into a chicken city.
Thank you for that. So,
If I could just comment on Councilman Clufus's pilot program. I think a pilot program would have to have the approval of the neighbors in the area, definitely. And it would have to have a goal.
Yes.
What would be the point of a pilot program if we weren't trying to reach some objective with it? So I think that would really have to be the focus. It would have to have a time period put on it.
Okay. Yeah. And just to reiterate on that point, I concur, because I think my stance can be summarized in individuals moved to Palm Coast with the expectation that they weren't going to have neighbors with chickens in the backyard. But if for whatever reason there's a situation where all the neighbors are okay with someone having chickens in their backyard, I think that's a community that we can all believe in. So I'm in agreement.
I mean, the only way I would counter that is, folks do move to Key West and enjoy that lifestyle very much.
True.
And it's most definitely a very chicken-friendly area.
That it is.
And I'm sorry, let me just show my hand, everybody else did. So I'm undecided. I feel completely neutral about the program on hand. So what I will do between now and then, City Manager, how does this roll forward?
Oh, Mayor, on the screen you have options. So if it's a pilot program, we just need that direction. So
No, I mean in terms of when does this show up again and get to like a business meeting?
at your business meeting, your next one.
At the next
Depending on
one.
the direction.
Okay.
Depending on council's direction and the.
Okay, so that gives me enough time. I want to meet with the folks and hear some more information. So I am that chicken on the fence right now. So I'll have to figure out which way I'm going to fall over here. So I will take it upon myself to do a little more homework.
If I may, Mayor, I would be in favor of a pilot program. I'm not saying that we should jump in, all in and let's go. I'm definitely, if that's a consensus, then I would be totally okay with that. I just want to say, though, with regards to the possibility of a nuisance, we've had a lot of fodder about Airbnbs in our city, yet we still allow them. So I think that we need to, yes, recognize that anything can be a nuisance. I get emails and calls on barking dogs. So to disallow a homeowner to responsibly have chickens because we are afraid it could be a nuisance, I think is a slippery slope, especially when we have ordinances in place to regulate other pets. We have noise ordinances, and currently we allow Airbnbs, which arguably is a huge nuisance to a lot of our homeowners. So I do think that a pilot program is probably the nice middle road here to really feel out those who are responsibly taking this next step and to actually see what the real life consequences
So correct me or interrupt me if I'm wrong. The direction to staff would be to, quite frankly, steal a template for a pilot program. I mean, don't reinvent the wheel. Hopefully one that is about the right size and that works, and bring the pilot program back to City Council for consideration.
I'm not sure I'm in favor of a pilot program because I have concerns about where that.
Well, I thought that's exactly what you described before.
No, I was commenting on.
No,
Councilman
what'd you say about the neighbors?
said
That's a
there
pilot
would-
program.
Yeah, but I said these concerns would have to be addressed, but I'm not supporting
So
a
wait,
pilot
all right, then
program
help
at
me
this
with that.
point.
I don't understand your comment. You said if it were to be done, the neighbors in the area would have to be, which would be a component of a pilot program.
Right, but then, we'd have to look a little further into that.
Right.
Like I said, there'd have to be a goal.
Right.
There'd have to be a time frame.
Which a pilot
And what
program
happens
would
if-
flush out.
What happens during that period of time, somebody buys a home in that area and unaware of the pilot program, and then wakes up and discovers, they're living next to people with chickens.
Bringing back a pilot program for
Now-
you might decide that the pilot program is inappropriate.
Right,
Well, I'm just trying to get to the next step. In
Yeah,
other
I
words,
know, I just
will
wanted-
you be willing to consider for vote a
Consider it,
pilot program?
But I think we, so you're saying put the whole chicken thing on the back burner except.
Well, no,
pilot
bring a,
program?
bring a pilot program forward and then tear it up. In other words, what are the problems with it? In other words, but at least get to that step.
Take a look at it.
Okay.
But I'm just saying I'm not that optimistic about it. I'm more
Understood.
in favor of doing that community chicken garden for folks who are real serious
Which
about doing
could be an option in the pilot program. Okay.
it. That would be
Okay.
where I'm headed.
And just for clarification, that's kind of where I'm aligning to. Essentially, like, if we could keep it single digits of people, I just am looking to be conducive to the people who are putting so much energy into it, not create the whole thing like you're talking about.
So there's two roads there. You understand? So one is kind of a pilot program. One would be more of a test, a halfway meeting for some form of a public chicken.
Garden,
Yeah.
something like that.
If I may too, correct me if I'm wrong, but if we do have an ordinance in place that says, look, these are the parameters within which you can keep chickens on your property, arguably it could help with some of these other coops that are not within compliance, that seem to be somewhat of a mess, so to speak. So, I mean, it could help in that regard as well.
So are you able to kind of come back with the two different pieces there?
We're real clear on the pilot program.
Okay.
We can go back, staff will work on regulations like it would be a code.
Yep,
and
yep.
have that spelled out.
Okay. The community piece is the
Community
city,
piece is a little hazy for
the
us.
city would locate a piece of land where a group would, at their own expense, use that land according to our codes to raise or tend to some number of chickens.
You know, I think later on in our agenda, we having a land kind of
Yeah, we do.
program, right? So I think our first step, staff's first step, then would identify.
It would be like-
I think our first step would be to identify, because when you're talking about a public, you're talking about a whole different realm of
Right,
regulation.
and you look to the 4-H for the model that they use.
Yeah.
Okay. City manager, enough to come back to us? I know it's a short timeline, so.
No, I really appreciate that. I would like to caveat, though, if our staff's pursuing two options to bring back to city council, I want to look to them and make sure that they have time, because it is a quick turnaround. Would it be a consideration?
Is there a
for
reason it can't float to one more?
July 11th workshop,
Yeah.
July 18th business is what would be
Okay,
more
and
comfortable,
I
I
mean,
think.
like I said, quite frankly, historically, so the turnaround on this ask from the public is really, pretty good. So to do it right, if you need one more cycle, I think you have a consensus from city council, that would be fine.
City manager, I think we may need more time.
Yeah.
Like August, to come back to a workshop to create these regulations, because we'll have to go through, to draft this pilot program and identify land if we're going to do the two together. It's some work.
Okay.
I don't have a problem with that. I just want to make sure that in the case that this does not get passed by us, we are still giving our residents time to maybe get it on the ballot. So I think the August timeline still allows that time for petitions if they do decide to take that route.
Yeah, and I'd like to just echo that. I'm going to have to look into the legal framework of doing, a community chicken space, and see if anybody else has done it. I haven't seen it. I've seen gardens in other communities. I'm not saying it's never been done. It's a great idea, but I just need to look into the legal framework of that.
There is a Root family had a foundation with a grant that did a community chicken, and I can give you any information. That's the only one that I could find.
Okay. So we're agreed August. I mean, let's give them enough time. And I will end with, there was one of the upsides, I think, Barb, that wasn't included.
I'm sorry.
Was the educational opportunity, which I think that we would all acknowledge that the potential for educational opportunity does exist. I don't want to just gloss over that.
Right, and we did have communications with UF, and they are willing to come to the city of Palm Coast for a very minimal fee. I want to say it was $5 or $10 or something very minimal, so that they could get that class. And it is very...
And I appreciate that's the class to learn about the chickens. I'm talking about children especially and families learning how to raise an animal and what animals mean and all of that.
Yes, they already have a program at the,
Yes.
what is it?
Well, I could point to our flagship programs and our schools where that already goes on.
Incorporating
That
with
just
that
brings that at home. I just wanted to make that, put that in the record. Okay.
Yeah.
There was one study I came across, newspaper article really, where back in 2012 in New York City, they had community gardens for chickens, and they noticed an increase in the lead in the eggs. I believe it was in the eggs that were produced by the chickens. So that's why Ray was saying we do need some more time, because we do want to make sure that the health of the product is appropriate for what we're producing.
Okay, well, listen, we're responding, we're listening, let's do it right. Thank you.
We've got good direction.
Okay, very good. All right, if there are no other questions, then we'll move forward. And I will reach out, so I want to know some more. We now move on to our presentation number 7, which is City Council Priority Update on Land Assets.
Hi, good morning, Mr. Mayor and council members. Estelle Lenz, City Planner. And this is a City Council priority presentation on land assets.
Pull your mic closer just so the folks that are online can hear you clearly.
Okay, is that a little better? Okay. Hi, Estelle Lenz, Planner with the city. This is City Council priority for land assets. The City Council priority was or is a strong, resilient economy. The task was to inventory, assess, and identify optimal use of city land assets. The scope of the project included creating a multi-department team to inventory and map city land assets.
Sorry, Estelle.
Yes.
The presentation isn't being shared. Thank you.
Oh, it's not. Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. All right, let's move forward. Okay, so the City Council priority, thank you, is strong, resilient economy. The task was to inventory, assess, and identify optimal use of city land assets. The scope of the project included creating a multi-department team to inventory and map city land assets, assess existing conditions, including but not limited to drainage, environmental, and encumbrances, and the analysis of optimal uses of city-owned properties. And the project deliverables include this report and a map of city assets. The first thing we did was establish the team, including myself as the project manager, Virginia Smith, the land management administrator, Kathy Alberg, Monica Diaz, and Jacob Ennis from our IT GIS department, Jordan Myers, the stormwater operations manager, Andy Hyatt, the stormwater maintenance manager, Chris Johnson, the utility GIS analyst, James Hurst, Parks and Recreation director, and Bill Eldridge, who is the city's IT broadband manager. And the first thing we did after establishing the team was we created an ArcGIS land assets map with appropriate fields for data entry whereby the team could inventory the parcels being utilized by their respective departments. Once selected, let me just turn this a little bit so I can see. Oops. Okay, so this is the map that we created, and on the right side of the screen are the fields that could be utilized by the team representatives as they were inventorying the city lands. So once the representative selected their department as the primary user of the department, they would populate the fields, and there's 3 fields for primary, secondary, and tertiary uses, because some city-owned parcels have multiple uses, such as the park department could also have a fire station and a cell tower. And then once they did select the department as their primary, as they were the primary user of the parcel would then become color-coded. So the blue are the utilities, orange is stormwater, red fire department, the green are the parks and recreation departments, The purple are the city administration departments, which are then subcategorized further into conservation and preservation, ponds, drainage water bodies, CRA, and I think there was one more. Economic development, right-of-way, miscellaneous. And this map will continue to be utilized to update cities' land base going, land assets going forward. As of May 1st of this year, the city owns 859 parcels of land encompassing 4,820 acres. The team members reviewed the map and then entered information for the respective departments. Many parcels, 110, remained unidentified after the initial inventory. The team analyzed the parcels for viable uses, including potential for stormwater, utilities, conservation, parks, affordable housing, and economic development. Many parcels were determined necessary for stormwater conservation and preservation and/or future park sites. The State Road 100 community redevelopment areas were identified, and parcels were identified as desirable for future well sites and some for economic development. The pie chart represents the percentages of acreage being utilized by the city's departments, with stormwater and engineering encompassing the most, 45%, and parks and recreation, 18%, utilities, 11%, canals, 7%, fire department, 2%, and public works, 3%, economic development, 2%, and the State Road 100 CRA parcels, 1%.
I'm sorry, can you just give me the definition of the economic development 2%? How are they chosen or described?
There's going to be, in the upcoming slides, 3 parcels
Okay.
that were identified for economic development, and I'll get to those. After inventorying those 110 remaining parcels, there were some remaining parcels that will come up in the following slides, but there's one that actually was identified as being available for council declaration as surplus and to be able to sell. One parcel for recreation and parks or stormwater. 3 of them were identified for suggested use as economic development. And then the 2 community redevelopment areas for Midway Park and Whispering Pines were also identified. So this parcel, or this slide, shows the one parcel that is identified as being able to be declared as surplus and sold. It's actually on the beach. It's 4530 Ocean Shore Boulevard. The parcel was acquired in 2006 as a site for a pump station. The pump station was subsequently located on another site, which was chosen in collaboration with Flagler County. So therefore, this site is no longer needed. It is a 1.43 acre site. Again, it's on the beach, and the recommendation is to have it declared as surplus and sold. This slide just is zoomed out of the same parcel, just so you could see where it's located. You could see the Hammock Dunes Bridge and A1A, and again, it's not within the city's jurisdiction. It is on the beach. This parcel is in the Grand Haven Master Plan Development. The approved Master Plan Development Agreement restricts this parcel to emergency services or a bicycle park. The parcel was originally designated as a fire station. The parcel is no longer needed for that, and the other option was, or according to the Master Plan Development, is for use as a bicycle park, which the Parks Department did express some interest in developing a bicycle park there. However, upon further investigate or discussion, the recommendation is to keep the parcel vacant as it provides additional capacity for drainage to Graham Swamp. This parcel is an 8-acre parcel. It's on the west side of US 1. It's actually zoned Comp 3. The parcel does have extensive wetlands, which limits the development of this site. The parcel can possibly be used as access to unlock the industrial development of parcels or lands to the west. And just to show you all these slides, they have a location map over here, which shows, the star shows where it's located within the city. So this parcel, the suggested use is for economic development, mostly as a gateway or access route to the lands to the west. This parcel,
I'm sorry, let me stop you there. So you mentioned that that could provide access to property that could be developed on the commercial side, but you don't include that parcel on the surplus for sale side. If it's an access and a gateway, how would the city hold on to it for what? I'm trying to understand that.
how would the city, well, I mean, it would.
Or why would the city hold on to it if it were going to be an access to a commercial development? Thanks.
Mayor, City Council, Jason DiLorenzo. This parcel is very wet and it doesn't have any real development opportunities on it. Our thought process is that perhaps we can use this as an economic development incentive to provide access to a parcel behind, which does have good uplands on it, but currently doesn't have access to it or concise access to it. And yes, I suppose we could sell it as part of a package. We'd consider that in the future, but perhaps as an incentive to unlock the piece behind.
An incentive for a commercial developer. We would provide a piece. Understood. Thank you.
Provide the right-of-way for access to, and it's directly behind some other industrial uses, so our thoughts are that other parcel makes sense to be, it's kind of locked away and there's wetlands to the west. There's nothing else you're going to use it for, so it would have good connection to the industrial parcels to the east.
So it's marketable as an incentive.
Correct.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Jason. This parcel is a 103.5 acre parcel. It's part of the Palm Coast Park Master Plan Development. And this parcel has a high potential for development as a business and an industry park. And the suggested use for this parcel is also economic development.
If I may just jump in here for my colleagues, this is my Tract 17 that I was mentioning and we were talking about last week.
So my question is, so this is not owned by, I'm sorry, but it's currently still owned by the city?
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yes. This parcel is 13 Commerce Boulevard. It was purchased by the utility department as potential for a well site. Testing has actually been completed and it is viable for a well site. However, that would not take up the entire parcel. It's a 3.87 acre parcel, so the remainder would be available for economic development, and that would be the suggested use. These parcels, or this slide represents shows the parcels that represent the State Road 100 community redevelopment area for Midway Park. These parcels are identified for future redevelopment in accordance with the city's CRA plan. And this area is actually identified on the CRA plan as a community-based recreational amenity, which may include a YMCA location. The current strategy is to hold off on development of these parcels until a town center commercial core gains a foothold. And this slide shows the parcels that encompass the State Road 100 community redevelopment area of Whispering Pines. These parcels are also identified for future redevelopment in accordance with the city CRA plan. And again, the current strategy is to hold off on development of these parcels until the town center core gains a foothold.
I'm sorry, say that last part. Until
the town center commercial core gains a foothold, such as the previous slide. Did you have some questions?
No, in my head, I'm trying to figure out what that timeline is. I know what it's been and how long is it going to be.
Jason's going to give us the exact years.
No, I mean, it's on a hold, and you know what my question is.
We can change the strategy at any time if you'd like to. You know, town center perimeter has been really successful, and because of the amount of trips on State Road 100, but town center core has struggled because of the lack of trips. Now we've experienced quite a few residential product coming down to town center. That's going to add rooftops. Rooftops will, should create or generate enough interest to start town center core. Our thoughts here is that if we open up additional lands on the perimeter for development, it just takes longer for the core to develop.
Right, and I guess my counterpoint to that is, you know, I'm anxious to promote the possibility to attract more attention to these. now. I'm not suggesting you change your strategy either, but I'm sure there are very few folks, other than your local network, that are even aware that that's a possibility.
When we will have to follow the CRA's procedures for these properties, which
Right.
means, so we will work up an RFP of what we're looking for, and then that will be promoted, worldwide for.
So this becomes a part of the economic development portfolio,
Yes,
right? So
yes,
that
it
people
does.
can be aware of it? Okay.
Yes, sir.
And I'm sorry, Mr. De Lorenzo, while you're up here, what control do we have? Because I understand the strategy of wanting to get the core sold because of less trips, and then after that, we can kind of start to work back out to the street side. But what control do we have for the core properties to be sold? Because we don't own a lot of them, whereas
No.
these we do.
Correct. All the core properties are in private ownership and various owners. We have a project that's working through the process right now that we're excited about. We're hoping that's going to continue to move forward. But we don't have a lot of control. In the past, we had some incentives for Town Center Core. We currently don't have any. We had the Kickstart program that provided some incentives. Our Economic Development Manager, Barbara Fedor, is going to be here on the 27th of June to talk about incentives, but on a general basis, but not on a focused basis like that. But she will touch on having economic development or opportunity zones.
So, Councilperson, to your point, so yes, we are held hostage by rooftops at this point, with a hope and a prayer that a significant increase in rooftops might spur up some commercial retail there, which is a hope and a prayer.
Well, I'm not really saying that. I don't
Well,
know
you're
that
asking about the control over it, and that's the answer.
I think partly, and I have different feelings on it that I don't find are appropriate to discuss from here, but I'm wondering if we can maybe kind of split the baby, so to speak, on this issue and start to market these somehow, in order to create more commercial, without kind of giving up the whole.
But they're not ours.
No, I'm talking about the perimeter ones, so the ones that are in this presentation.
Yeah, you're right, so we agree.
Yeah, yes.
I would just mention that people bring suggestions to us for these parcels from time to time. We actually spoke to someone 2 weeks ago about it, pretty interesting one. We kind of said, well, go provide us more information and we'll consider it further.
And it wouldn't be bad, I know people are bringing them to us, if we were able to go out there and get them.
So there's a couple ways, right? Right now, these properties, we control them completely. So we could draw up exactly what we are looking for and see if we could find that.
I like that.
Business or, business type or that would fit what we think, right?
As you grow your economic development department, I think everybody up here would support that initiative to be proactive about that. Good.
The only thing I'll add is right now, like State Road 100 corridor has a lot of stuff going on. We have the BJ's with several out parcels. We have Airport Commons 2. We have the 2 that are under construction right now. So there's a lot of retail and commercial coming in.
But a lot of focus on that area now where people are looking. So this is kind of that time when you might be able to just, romance somebody.
That's a very good point. So right now it's very busy. So maybe, packaging something sooner than later makes sense. Or having the only remaining parcels on the State Road 100 corridor could also have benefits for us when we're looking to attract that certain something that we don't have yet, and we're the only one that has the land.
Always like sooner than later, so thank you.
Okay.
Sorry for the interruption, but I want to get through that. Good. Go ahead.
All right, and this actually is the last slide of the presentation. This is, there are 3 parcels here that encompass 288 acres in northeast part of town. The future land use map amendment of these parcels are conservation and greenbelt. They're actually zoned estate 2 at this time. And on our land assets map, they're designated as conservation and preservation. But the staff wanted to discuss these further, and City Manager Ms. Bevan said that she's very familiar with these parcels, and she offered to discuss these parcels today. Ms. Bevan.
Very good. And if I could just ask just one question, City Manager. So there's a conservation initiative which is currently underway by utility, is it? I mean, there's work going on back there now.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes,
Yeah.
Mayor. Swale rehab material processing, that's
Right.
our stormwater and engineering department.
But is that, some of that material being used to replace some conservation land that was misused in years past, was my understanding?
Today, the restoration efforts have not commenced on this particular property.
So how long a process is that?
We could get into that.
Okay. It's a significant
Yes, it
process
is.
then. Okay.
It is.
Very good.
And Estelle, great job to you and your team. Since this is the last slide, I just want to extend the appreciation and the diligence of putting this PowerPoint together. I know it took a lot of work and coordination.
And in addition to that, I want to thank you for dovetailing this presentation, because this becomes a very important organ, if you will, of the comprehensive plan, I would think, in terms of, creating vision and, how to respect and or perhaps even utilize some of these properties as the plan rolls out forward as part of the vision. So thank you for that.
And Mayor, to Estelle's point, I was personally involved as your senior environmental planner on this project. A little bit of background, because it is a unique property. About 10 years ago, City Council took the approach of acquiring this acreage, and it was primarily at the time for two folds, conservation and also to offset floodplain compensatory storage for capital improvement projects. And those are the area we call Northeast Corridor area. That's Matanzas Woods, Palm Harbor Parkway, Old Kings Road. So there was a double benefit of acquiring this property, and that's why you see on this slide and to the right a very unique shaped parcel that was basically approved to be used for that storage need. Now, you see a lot of other colors on this slide because it does have some history. Previous owners that acquired the property did some unpermitted activities. Unpermitted means not with the local, not with the state, not with Army Corps of Engineers. And at the time, it was the largest impact in Water Management District history, 42 acres, which had an influence on how much we paid for it. We got kind of a deal. So we took on the property and the regulatory pathways to reconcile those issues. And in 2015, we actually took 16.2 acres of unpermitted wetland impacts off the books because they were functional wetlands over time. So since that time, we haven't really been back out there and said how healthy the wetlands are. But we do have approved restoration plans from both agencies. We just have not commenced and worked down that process. So that's on the environmental side. If you can go to the next slide, Estelle. We also want to get as much benefit we could and to present that to City Council. So in 2014, we provided also another amenity that could be in harmony with what we were doing on these lands, and that was a passive network of rural trails, not traditionally our multi-use paths, but also making sure we went ahead and addressed those potential impacts at the time of looking at the restoration. I will say that in addition to this, we did look at trying to improve the wetlands beyond the impacts and producing mitigation credits. As you know, there's wetland mitigation banks that serve the region, and there was some value to that, but I don't think the return on investment made sense at the end of the day. So that's a little bit of the history of the project. I'm here to answer any questions that you may have specific to those points.
No, I mean, so you've framed the opportunities and understood.
And one note to leave with you is that there are some uplands on the peripheral, because this is adjacent to Matanzas Woods and I-95,
Yep.
that would not drastically impact the value of the conservation efforts.
Which represents great opportunity. I'm familiar with the property, so good. So the fact that it's on our list and we're aware of it and we know it, great, very good, thank you.
Okay, and that basically concludes the presentation. If you have any further questions, be happy to
I have a quick question. Okay, on page 153, you mentioned that the team analyzed the parcels for viable uses, including potential economic development, conservation, parks, affordable housing, and economic development. I sit on the board of the Affordable Housing Committee, and on the chart that you show in the package here, in the presentation, they show that there are no parcels of land that are available for what I would like to refer to as workforce housing for individuals that are very hardworking citizens in this community. However, there are no homes that are really affordable to them. So the Affordable Housing Committee is always asking, well, is there any land here in the city that the city would be willing to use for workforce housing? So that is my question. Is there any way of finding a way that we can provide some type of workforce housing here in the city of Palm Coast for these individuals that need to have homes, own their own homes, live and work here in the city of Palm Coast?
So can I take that question?
Yes,
Only
absolutely.
because that may be a little bit over the top for staff. You're bringing in another element. So what I can tell you is that, because actually I've just been working on the numbers, so when we're talking about the westward expansion, there will be one or more development bubbles that are dedicated to produce a retail product in terms of homes that are at what we'll call that workforce affordable housing number. Now, it may not be, tomorrow and as quick as finding a piece of dirt today to use, but it is absolutely a pillar and a requirement and an integral part of the expansion process to create a balanced demographic, a balanced housing, a balanced addition to the city for the future. Now, I also would encourage you to continue to, look for opportunities. I'm not aware of any here in the traditional Palm Coast piece, as we're approaching the build out. If there's a magic or, a piece that we could find under the blanket someplace, great. And I sat on your committee, before you did as well and had the same challenge. So I applaud you for, asking the question, keeping it alive and looking for that. I don't know that there's something out there right now for it.
Mayor, if I can interject. So, as you know, and I think we've briefly talked about this, the Live Local Act just passed and goes into effect July 1. And part of the requirements of that piece of legislation is to look at city jurisdictional surplus property to see if any is appropriate for affordable housing purposes. So that is the most recent legislative mandate from the state that goes into effect July 1. So we will have to do that.
Okay, and go ahead.
I'm sorry. And that was part of this exercise. So the team looked at all the property that, and analyzed it. So as you saw in Estelle's presentation, the property that was available, some of those larger chunks, behind industrial uses, we had several others that were geared for economic development. So we actually did go through that exercise, and the staff, through our analysis, at this time, did not identify any potential, because they may be incompatible with land uses. You don't want, single-family homes right next to industrial, for example. Some of them are too wet.
I understand that.
So we did do that analysis as part of this.
Okay, the other question that I have is, and it's also about, because I'm on the Affordable Housing Committee, is what they're saying to me is that we need this to happen now. We can't wait, because there are so many working people here in this community that don't have access to homes that they can afford to purchase, so that they can live here, and we need these people here.
I think everybody, that's certainly in terms of the balance of the community. I mean, the blessing of the West helps us begin to cure it. It doesn't get you a timeline for today, other than I will say this, and I'll go back to the multifamily concept again, that gets you a lot closer to the possibility of folks that are working here being able to live here, at least from the beginning. Doesn't solve the long-term problem.
And you're speaking of rentals?
Rentals, yeah. I mean, it's a way to get started in the shorter term.
It's a way to get started, but still the rentals are very high. They're extremely high.
So, as council had said, I just participated in a meeting with the lobbyist from Florida Realtors with the county commission as well to explore the 3 new initiatives within the Florida Now concept, and they're going to get back to us on what we might be able to do here locally. Now, I don't know what those timelines are either, so I don't want to give you a thought that something's going to happen really quick.
I understand.
They're analyzing the new legislation as you presented is not well understood yet. There's a lot more of it that needs to be fine-tuned, but they are working on it on behalf of Palm Coast. So I made that clear. Just so you know, I'm the speaker's key contact for Florida Realtors, so I've asked them to make us a test case for that new legislation. So I'll continue to report back on our progress. We just had that meeting earlier this week, and I'm looking for some information back within the next 1 or 2 weeks. So I'll keep pushing away at it.
I thank you for that. And just one other thing. What I am also hearing from them is that there are so many people that are leaving this community just because of that they cannot afford here. And then there are also not enough jobs here. And so I applaud Teresa for trying to bring more economic development here so that these people will have the opportunity to live and work here in Palm Coast.
So I appreciate the comment. I'm going to challenge, and we'll have to reach out a little bit. I'm going to challenge the statistics on that. So somebody's going to have to show me a significant migration out of Palm Coast, because I'm looking at the real estate inventory, I'm looking at the supply and demand, and there may be a lot of folks that want to be here, but I'm not aware of a migration that is, I mean, if we had a migration outward, that would create a supply of housing that would be potentially available. I'm not really seeing it. I know that people may be talking that way, but I'm going to go back to the data. Okay. And together we'll look at, and I have access to that data, so let's look at it together to make sure that what we're hearing is correct.
Well,
and you know, a few loud voices can make a big difference, and I want to make sure that we really are understanding the situation as best we can.
Well, that's exactly what I had also brought to the attention, is that we need the statistics on it. So, thank you.
Very good. Other comments by City Council?
I have a couple questions.
Yeah.
Have we looked at whether or not any of these parcels of land would be appropriate for a cell tower? Because we have heard a lot of uproar from the community about the current proposed location of a cell tower. So if any of these locations would meet the needs of that, and whether or not it's something that we can look further into.
Yes, the team was asked to, there's a field here, it doesn't show on this slide here, but one of the fields that the team was asked to toggle yes or no as to whether a parcel, as they were identifying it for their department's usage, as to whether it had excess lands that could be viable for other uses. And specifically if there would be like a 100 by 100 square foot area that could possibly, not that they would be qualified to say, yes, a cell tower can be constructed here, but just if there was any excess lands at all. And so that was identified, or those parcels were identified. I did do a very preliminary analysis of those parcels and compared them as to proximity to residences. You know, the code requires 150 feet away from residentially zoned property. Made sure it had access, that sort of thing. Very preliminary discussion with our IT department. And so there is a list of parcels that are available for further analysis. We still need to look at it for, you know, wetlands, and it requires a lot more analysis, but yes, we have identified several sites.
Okay, great. And thank you for the work that you've done on this. I think this is vitally important as you know, I understand moving west is important, but we also need to focus on what we currently have and what we can currently work on as far as infrastructure and development. So thank you for further looking into sites for cell towers as well. Councilwoman Hyder, I do commend you on representing your committee. I think that, you know, specifically when we look at the slide with track 17, I know I keep pushing this, but as we look at the Palm Coast Park MPD, making sure that we've got that good mix of single-family residential, multifamily, and light industrial and retail commercial, so that we have a good balance of jobs, residents, and also multifamily for our workforce. And not just our workforce, but our students as well, and our young adults. So
Absolutely.
just making sure that that mix is there, I think, is super important. So I really thank the staff for doing this. And I guess at this point, I'd ask the city manager what direction it's looking at from city council, because it seems that there are some parcels here that we can start marketing as a city, whether or not we're already doing it. I'm just curious as to what we're
So
doing.
just a comment before you get to city manager. So just so I'm understanding, so track 17 has a broad range of opportunity for a mix. So is that what we're talking about?
No, I'd like track 17 to be light industrial, but
They're asking for,
the entire
but they're
MPD.
asking for an opportunity of a variety of uses.
No, in the entire MPD, in the entire Palm Coast MPD, which has 23 or 24 tracks.
Okay.
So
you're
what I'm
extracting that
encouraging-
one piece to limit the opportunity, but you want more opportunity surrounding it.
No.
I'm just trying to understand.
No. What I'm saying is, I think that we need to recognize that this parcel of land, let's see, if we look at the total parcels looked at were 859. Our staff extracted 3 that are prime for economic development, and track 17 is one of them. So I think that shows how important it is to really bring in some good paying jobs, specifically in the light industrial, which is your good blue collar working jobs that will really be good for our community. So that's all I'm saying. I think that it should be focused on and marketed in that way, because it does provide a good balance and diversity to our residential, commercial, and also just as a provision for providing diversity of jobs here.
Do you have a question for city manager?
Yes, and I thought, sorry, city manager, I don't know if I was clear on my question. I'm just curious as to what we can do from here now that staff has put in the work to kind of identify these different parcels, what the next step is.
Yeah, I think your first milestone is going to be on June 27th, when we really start talking about the incentives for economic development and these parcels. I think that's your first milestone to work towards. Is that helpful?
Yes,
Councilmember?
thank you.
Okay, any other comments?
I just wanted to say thank you for the presentation, and I think that this will also be encompassed partly in a couple of weeks when we have Barbara in front of us. This is great information to keep at the forefront of our minds, and I thank you for the detailed inventory list.
Thank you very much for your presentation.
Very good. The next presentation today will be a leadership intern training experience, the LITE team projects.
Mayor Alphen, if I could just lead us off a little bit, if that's okay. So this is a program that's a voluntary program for our staff. It's been established for 10 years. We have 32 successful graduates of the program. In fact, I think many of our folks in the back there have been participators. They're raising their hands. And this program was developed to address the city's need for executive leadership, and we've been very successful with those outcomes. And looking at developing additional capacity, provide executive leadership on special projects that our staff would normally not work on in their daily roles and responsibilities. And 2 of those projects started in July and August of last year, before the existing strategic action plan priorities were adopted. So our team worked on EV infrastructure expansion in Palm Coast and Flagler County, and also looking at our brand of culture and what our identity is for the future. And we want to be a city on the rise. So those are 2 projects that they worked on. They're going to successfully baton those off to champion departments to take it to the next level, and you'll hear a little bit again on June 27th about your SAP priorities, and that'll be in tandem with their efforts. And I'd just like to read a little bit of city needs that are benefited from this. Professional development and mentoring, develop managers for greater roles and responsibilities, deepen the bullpen, improve employees' understanding and buy-in of city goals and objectives, improve employee retention and recruitment, and I'm going to say it, have fun as part of the program. And before I turn it over to Brittany, we have a short little video to really praise our our employees that volunteered in this program. and they outcompeted many other candidates. There were 19 that originally applied, and the outgoing LITE team picked these 8 successful candidates. So before I turn it over to Brittany, I just have to give a very strong thank you to our Flagler County tax collector, Suzanne Johnston, who organized and hosted the Flagler County Leadership Academy, and we had also 2 successful graduates of that, and that's Allie, our Recreation Supervisor of Aquatics, and Alyssa Roscoe, Residential Collection Supervisor. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Brittany for a short video. Leadership intern training experience has had a really brilliant history here at the City of Palm Coast. The true experience is to mentor, grow professional skills, relationships, working in challenging environments, getting to actually meet one-on-one with local leaders and internal leaders, and foster their passion of being better for the organization.
One of the most rewarding parts of LITE Team for me was the speaker series, when we got to hear from community leaders from other local government agencies give their insights on how they do things a little bit differently.
Personally, the most rewarding part of LITE Team was getting to meet staff that I hadn't really interacted with before and build relationships that were really valuable during LITE Team, but that you can see the long-term value in. When I need help with, something with public works, or if I need a fact from customer service, I now have point people that I'm very comfortable going to and discussing things with.
Getting in a room together with people from all different departments that you work closely with, but you don't necessarily get FaceTime with that often, and discussing things, seeing how they solve problems. Even though they're different problems, you can take a little bit of what you learn from how they go about achieving their goals and obtaining success, and kind of working into your day-to-day.
I'm exceptionally proud and of their abilities, and now they're going out there to be our strongest ambassadors within the organization. So again, City Council, thank you for your support on this program, and I'm going to introduce each of the LITE team members and provide them a certificate, and this will be one of the final steps of closing out their program that was over the course of a year. Angelo D'Souza. Bill Eldridge. Cam Brown. Kim Tretner. Melissa Hill. Stacy Davis. Shannon Martin. And Matt Johnson.
So while you're getting ready, I have to congratulate the LITE team for putting in extra effort to build relationships throughout the city of Palm Coast. This is not something that you had to do. This is something that you volunteered your time to do over an entire year. That's quite incredible, and also I think it lends itself to our succession plan as well. So thank each and every one of you. City Manager, if I may ask, so that these fine graduates today, so what they've learned and what they've experienced, I mean, I'm sure you're going to find a way to utilize that for each of them and collaboratively together. So is there a follow-up now with the graduating LITE team? In other words, will they come back in some period of time to share their experiences and what they were able to bring forward?
Yes, Mayor. As part of the closing out of their session, there's a 360 evaluation. So what did they gain from it as a professional? What can we improve on as the program develops and matures? And then also recommended ideas for the future. And as I introduced, the LITE team today is going to be the judger of the future LITE team and the candidates moving through the program. And also being ambassadors to share their experiences one-on-one during that process.
Good to hear. You certainly have City Council's support, and we all congratulate you. So thank you for your efforts. All right, we'll move now to, are we on resolution number 9 there? If you would read that in for us, please.
Yes, sir. This is the agenda item number 9, a resolution for the purchase of property at 266 Bird of Paradise Drive. A resolution of the City of Palm Coast, Florida, approving the terms and conditions of the purchase agreement with Alan L. Cooper for the purchase of 266 Bird of Paradise Drive, authorizing the city manager or designee to execute said agreement, providing for severability, providing for conflicts, providing for implementing actions, and providing for an effective date.
Good morning, good afternoon, Mayor, City Council. Virginia Smith, Land Management Administrator, and with me today is Carl Cody, Director of Stormwater and Engineering. I'm actually going to be presenting on items 9 and 10, and also informing you of an additional contract that we did receive executed for Council's consideration that will be added next week on the agenda. These are land purchases relating to a project for Matanzas Woods Parkway and Bird of Paradise. And these are the locations of the purchase for 6 Ludlow Lane East, 266 Bird of Paradise Drive, and 264 Bird of Paradise Drive. The fourth one will be next door to 6 Ludlow Lane. Right next door will be 8 Ludlow Lane East. We did not receive the contract back, but we did receive an email that he is countered, and we've accepted his counter offer. So until I receive his executed contract, we won't bring that one for Council's consideration. So the future roadway project will be to realign the intersection, and that's why we need to purchase the land. So Luther Drive will be closed off. You'll see the red X will be closed there. We won't affect the property owner on Luther Drive as his driveway comes out of there. It will be closed off. Carl can let you know if you have any technical questions as to how that will be closed off. And then the road for off of Ludlow and realigned at an intersection for Bird of Paradise. So the purchase of Bird of Paradise 2 parcels and the 2 parcels off of Ludlow Lane East will be realigned. So in the future, if there's an intersection light put up, that will be able to easily be put up. And it'll change from a T intersection to a 4-way intersection to allow for the better flow, and then it's suited for the traffic light as well. And any questions?
What is the purpose of closing off Luther? Why does that have to close?
We'll make that final determination when we get into the design, but when the county performed project development and environmental study as part of the overpass at the interchange, it identified restructuring these roadways because their intersections are so close together. It's part of those safety improvements with turning movements and whatnot.
So it does pose some inconvenience, at least to a half a dozen residents in terms of their travel, their connection out to Bird of Paradise. Right? I mean, they can go right out now. Now they got to go back in and around. No? Am I looking at it wrong?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple lots, there's a couple residents that'll have to drive 2 or 3 lots further to get to Belterre.
Okay.
Correct.
All right.
A few will have to drive a little less, so it's...
I'm just kind of confused. But first, I want to ask, what is this going to cost us?
The costs vary.
A guesstimation.
They're what, 60 to 80 grand or so a piece for the lots.
And that's appraised value too, right? I read
That's appraised value, and there's some added costs because these purchases all have to follow the federal requirements for land purchasing because it is a DOT-funded project. Typically, we'll be able to use those costs as part of our 10% match. Typically, when we get grants from DOT, when we go to 4-lane this roadway, we can input what dollars the city has put towards the project, and this could count towards our city's 10% share of the cost of the project. So the plus side is they're not developed yet. So if the home was put on these lots and then we went to go buy them, the cost would be astronomical. So there's a big push now with all the development happening that we pushed not getting the funding from DOT to move this project forward. We said, let's go buy these lots before they get built on because now it's going to be the cheapest time to purchase them.
All right. And DOT fronts 90% of this?
No, not on the right-of-way. Typically, when we get a grant for the overall project, because construction's your biggest cost, you know, they usually fund things in phases. They'll fund the PD&E study, which they did with the county. The next step is design, which was funded, but we moved those dollars to fund construction of phase 1 of Old Kings Road. So it's still in the work program for them to fund the design phase, and then they'll eventually fund construction phase. And typically, with those grants, they require a 10% match from the city, and we can use our purchase of the right-of-way as part of that 10% match requirement.
Got it. So has there been a big public outcry for this?
Bird of Paradise says that we received numerous complaints from Bird of Paradise. It serves a ton of residents. Yeah. Its level of service is very poor. So it is at some point probably going to require a signal even before we 4-lane the roadway. And so lining the roadway, one, improves our safety, prepares us for future costs with the 4-laning. It just helps with level of service and safety.
Thank you.
There are times at the traffic for the school that, because I come from up there, the traffic is backed up all the way to Matanzas, on Matanzas Woods Parkway, all the way to Laramie.
So this will alleviate
With
that traffic.
the intersection lined up in a traffic light, it will possibly help alleviate that.
Thank you.
What is the timeline as far as changing this to 4-lane and really?
That's up to DOT and the work program funding. It is on their list. I'm trying to remember the priority number, but it is a ranked project on the TPO's priority list for projects. So right now it's not currently funded in their 5-year plan for design, but mainly because...
I can come back with the priority number for you.
Okay.
Yeah, because in the past, when they did fund design, we had Old Kings Road that was fully designed, and we said, we don't want another, the city said, we don't want another project sitting on the shelf waiting for construction funds for 20 years. So let's go build Old Kings Road, and then we'll design this. So I think the target that we've kind of laid out to them was Old Kings Road was a top priority. Let's finish that project out, and then we'll move on to this one, our city's next top priority.
And this purchase and the next land purchase, which is number 10 on the agenda, were these already budgeted for?
Yes, we have funds in our budget for this.
Okay.
As part of our impact fee. It comes from our transportation impact fee.
I understand. So I just want to commend you all on kind of looking ahead at our infrastructure and traffic needs. I know traffic is starting to become more and more of an issue as we grow, so just commend you guys at looking ahead and trying to keep our costs down by purchasing this land before it's developed on.
And should I receive that fourth contract by next week, I'll put that in the agenda packet for your consideration. And that one would be to the east of 6 Ludlow, which would be 8 Ludlow.
Got it. Okay. Should we move right to number 10, which is the resolution?
No further presentation, just NASA for.
I'll just read the title in. So
Yeah.
this is agenda item number 10 that was just covered in staff's presentation. This is the purchase of property for 6 Ludlow Lane East, a resolution of the City of Palm Coast, Florida, approving the terms and conditions of the purchase agreement with Teresa Cross and Lorraine Cross for the purchase of 6 Ludlow Lane East, authorizing the city manager or designee to execute said agreement, providing for severability, providing for conflicts, providing for implementation, and providing for an effective date.
City council members, Vice Mayor and City Council Person Pontieri, I mean, I think you'll agree with me and fellow council members that City Manager, you have to help us promote and project these projects because, you know, what we hear is that there's congestion, and I'm not sure that the public is at all aware that staff is absolutely looking for every possible opportunity within our budget constraints to ease traffic, to build, you know, roads and cut-throughs and other ways to make our transportation system a little bit more efficient than it is. It's an ongoing project that we are, in fact, doing. So through communications, if you can help throw this out so people do understand, hey, you know, we are aware of this and we're actually doing things about it. So I appreciate that. Comments?
I think you summed it up.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, with that, we'll move to public participation. Final public participation today. So if there are any members of the public that would like to address City Council on items that were not previously a part of the agenda.
Yeah. So Andrew, Palm Coast. I just want to say thanks to the council for, taking the consideration and the time to, review our discussion with this backyards chicken thing. I know it takes, time and effort, and you guys, you listen to our silly jokes and you put up with us, and you still considered our requests. And I want to thank Ms. Grossman. I know she's not here, but that was a nice presentation that she put on today. I think it cited a lot of on the negative side of what you see with backyard chickens, but I thought it was a good presentation. When I started talking to people about this, they said that don't waste your time, don't go to city council because they don't listen to people. And I said I'd give you guys I'm a positive outlook person. I give you guys the opportunity to just hear us out, and you did. To me, this is kind of a demographic issue. Some people want chickens, some people don't. I always find it funny when people start saying, "Oh, it's going to be so much noise," or "It's going to turn down property values," and things like that. This catastrophic, conclusion about what a backyard chicken's going to do. I didn't understand how powerful they were, but anyway, I think it's probably time to move on because we don't have the votes, obviously. Thank you, Ms. Pontieri, for supporting us. But the rest of you guys, you can go ahead and do a study, or look into a pilot program. But if we don't have the votes, this is coming down to a petition. So why waste the city's money and time and doing all this stuff if we don't have the votes? So just for the council's perspective, here's my perspective. I'm going to give you a functional assessment of how I think things have worked for me and some of my friends so far that have come with the council. So my opinion is that, based on the facts that I've seen, is that the council thinks that this is a format for them, for us to come and change your mind about an issue, change your opinion. That's not what my understanding of citizenship is that we come and tell you what we want. And sometimes I think you prefer an empty room, because I've been here for the prayer issue, this chickens thing. When I talked last week, the lawyer said some of these decisions have been made in 2002. Well, here we are. It's 20 years later. You know, we should still be able to talk about these things. So what I'm going to say is, you know, my experience is that we've come here in, you know, in good faith. You see an empty room here because it's the end of the day, but if citizens show up to talk about something, your opinion on the matter doesn't come into effect. You guys are representative government, so when people come, it should say, you could say something like, well, my opinion about chickens is that it's going to do this, this, and this. But if the people of Palm Coast want this, let's look into it. Let's make it an option. Let's let people figure it out in neighborhoods, whatever you want to do. I just think that it's a travesty to, you know, the more people that show up on an issue, you know, the less, you know, when you build public trust, it starts with hearing people out and them understanding that if they show up in the room, that people will listen, people will understand. And to me, when I'm using this as, you know, that just hasn't been my experience. So when you look at the prayer, how many people showed up for and against? Wasn't in consideration, it went back to the council's opinion on that. When you look at the chicken thing, you know, there's been a lot of people that have come in and, you know, I think there's been one person that has been against it, one person that's come up to the microphone.
So we'll have to conclude the comments.
We can conclude the comments.
But I made an offer earlier, not an offer, I told you earlier today what I would like to do is reach out and talk to you, you know, as one council member, so that I can understand this, you know, even better. Yeah. And I will actually go through this conversation with you as well and give you my take on your opinion.
Okay, one more thing, and yeah. I know I'm over time. Last week, my wife came in, and she quoted a founding father. Yes. And she made a prayer for the council. Mm-hmm. And then when she sat down, Mr. Clufus said that this, he must have Googled it or something, this founding father was not in favor of democracy. So I'll summarize all of this by saying that we need to understand, and you know, we need to understand what a government is, especially if you work in the government. And he said this as a government official, just like you guys all are. And we start the meeting by looking at that flag and we say, "To the republic for which it stands, one nation under God." Okay, so I can save you the Google for next time. And most of our founding fathers were not in favor of democracy, okay? It's a representative republic. And that's what you folks are. It's not a lecture. You know, I just want you guys to consider from one person to you that that's my position in hopes that maybe it'll make a difference tomorrow, okay?
Thank you.
So thank you very much. And I'm also a District 3 resident, so wanted to definitely encourage you to think more about that. And all you guys can have a great day. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your comment. Are there any other members of the public that would like to address City Council at this time?
Hello, I'm Josh Fabian. So when what was discussed today about some kind of possible pilot program for chickens, what I would be concerned with that would be that we were seeing pictures of people who are clearly breaking code with chicken, but what you weren't seeing was the plenty of people who probably have chickens and no one knows about it. And if you are creating a pilot program that makes the barrier to entry too high, why would someone participate in it? If it's like, well, if I can just have chickens in my backyard with my fence, no one's complained about them for years, so now I want to let the government come in and inspect it and do all these things to regulate something that I'm able to do and no one knows anything about it anyways. So I would be concerned if you're trying to make a pilot program that's overly strict, that you might not get the results you want, that why would I sign up to let the government walk in my backyard without my permission if I don't need to, and you can't do anything about it. But I do think it comes down to a property rights issue of it is my property. because I can do what I want with it within reasons. I could come and complain and say we should outlaw dogs because they bark. I could say that we should outlaw children because they make loud noises. You live close to people, there are going to be issues. I've never called code enforcement on any of my neighbors. They've never called code enforcement on me for any of things. And I'm sure every house is breaking some type of code. So I would just not want to make it overly strict. And I think that as government does, we're overcomplicating something that should be fairly straightforward. There already are laws on how loud you can be between certain times. There already are laws about, you can't have a farm in your backyard and have 100 chickens. So if someone wants 5 chickens, how is that different than someone having 5 dogs or 5 cats that live in their house and go in their backyard, as long as they stay contained within their property and they're not causing issues for other people? That's all. And then if you said you want to talk with us, should I leave my contact information? I know I have previously.
Yeah, that would be very helpful.
Okay.
I'm sure we already have it, but yes, please do that so I could reach out. Thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any remaining members of the public that would like to address City Council at this time? Yes, sir.
Of course. As every other month, Nathan Phelps, Palm Coast. I am a resident of the Z section, which I believe is District 4, and Councilman Hyder, you're my representative, correct? 4? Z section? Okay. I read the website wrong, so I thank you for representing me. I know we come here a lot and we sometimes seem aggressive, but we're not here to start a coup. And you just drove here on my lunch break. I work from home, so hopefully this presentation is not too much of a cluckster cluck. So I want to address a couple things I heard in the presentation. The first one I want to debunk is the bird flu severity. Globally, since 2003, that's 20 years, the World Health Organization says there have only been 873 cases of bird flu globally in 20 years. So it's more of a boogeyman, it's more of a concern that people have without knowing the facts behind it. So I think that's something that should be thrown out. And bird to human transmission is rare, and human to human is even more rare. So that's just not something that should come up in these conversations. Again, I don't think. Another thing I heard is the concern of property values, then followed by the discussion of affordable housing. So are we concerned about property values if we're also looking for lower cost housing? In the Z section, I have a duplex at the end of my road. Across from me is a cul-de-sac with 2 more duplexes, and every block between my house and Belterre has multiple duplexes. I personally don't find that offensive, but that is something that my realtor pointed out to me when he looked at this home. And so that means there is a concern for affordable housing and property values. So if our stance is we're defending property values, but also trying to add affordable housing, which I'm not against, there is a conflict of interest there. So phantom chickens versus affordable housing is much more substantial ding to property values. That does need to be considered. We talked about the pilot program versus the, we've been calling it a co-op, the community garden. That is asking us to pay for a job for us to coordinate with other households, families. It's just not satisfactory. That's like saying, as opposed to having a dog, would you like to drive to a park to take care of dogs and leave them there, but make sure there's always someone showing up, cleaning up, taking care for them, and then we have to fund it ourselves? That is us paying to have a job added on top of our schedules. Many of the people that want this are parents with multiple children. And I know this for a fact. There are 80 people in our Palm Coast Chicken Alliance group that was started mid-April. So this is a growing thing. There are a lot of people that want this, but they don't have time to drive to this. And then one more note, turkeys walk to my yard, so dogs will bark at them. One more. We looked at Orlando. That is the strictest regulation of all the cities in Florida that I looked up. So comparing us towards Orlando just doesn't seem fair when we need to also consider all the other sample sizes within Florida alone. Thank you very much. I do appreciate this venue.
Thank you for your comments, and we'll have more conversation. Any other members of the public would like to address City Council at this time? Seeing no one come forward, I will close public comment, and I'll come back to the dais for discussion by city council members of matters that were not on today's agenda.
I would just like to make re-mention of the Parkview, is it Parkview Avenue coming into Beltier, north of the school, Wadsworth, about the hazard of traffic there, because it was mentioned to me by one of my constituents that there has been 2 accidents there that he saw, that he witnessed, but there's been several according to him, and they would like to look at having a traffic light put there.
Good, thank you. And since, if I may, since you started on traffic, I've had a meeting, city council members, with a group of folks speaking about Florida Park Drive. They have come to me, and as you all know, there's been much conversation over many years and initiatives that were talked about and not, taken forward for a lot of reasons. They've now come forward with a proposal which I want to share with you, and then my request of you is that you agree that this could be an agenda item for discussion at some point. Their request is to mitigate the bad driving and the traffic issues on Florida Park Drive, to install 3 sets of additional stop signs, which would be located at Flintstone Court, Fleming Court, and Fern Court, which would create 3-way stop intersections, which they feel would reduce some of the traffic and improve the safety. Additionally, they would like the speed limit for Florida Park Drive reduced from 30 to 25 miles an hour as a test to see if that could additionally improve the traffic safety. And those are the requests. So my ask of you is, will you consider, city manager, putting this on an agenda?
I just need consensus from city council.
Any questions about that?
No, I think we need to have our traffic engineer present in all of.
No, I mean, it has to be studied and all of that.
But I have no
I'm bringing it forward because I committed to bring it forward, but it also sounded to me like a reasonable test, because this is only one road. We've got a bunch of other ones, so I'm kind of looking at this one as maybe, if the discussion is positive and staff agrees, this might be a way to start that process of making
And then dealing
the
with
roads.
the other roads like Cimarron and so on down
Exactly.
the road.
That's the thought.
Yeah, I would be in favor of that, and I've advocated for those same things for Cimarron, so definitely would be open to that.
So city manager, you do have consensus, so I'll leave it to you to find out when it's appropriate for staff to come to us.
Understood. Thank you.
As a side note, real quick, I would also be curious as if there was phase 2. So if we could do a traffic analysis, and I'm not talking full-fledged traffic analysis, but something like car count. Across the road, we install 1 stop sign. Let's take another data point. We install 2 stop signs. We take another data point. Let's see if this actually drives anything. No pun intended on driving. Let's see if it actually drives down traffic. I think that might be...
Excellent suggestion, because to your point, there is a dispute about DOT's traffic count versus the city's data for traffic count. So, yes, absolutely. I mean, to take it in stages. I mean, if we're stepping forward, that's all I think that's all we can hope for at this point. Okay, very good. Yeah. Thank you. I do have one other for council comments since we're here. I'm just reporting on my experience, my participation in the TPO, the River to Sea Transportation Organization. I have been appointed the second vice chair of the executive committee, so there's a good opportunity that I might be able to jump ahead, because the vice chair ahead of me is running for office and likely to win, so probably would come out of that slot. So that will give us the strongest voice that the city has ever had at the TPO. I can tell you that we had our Secretary of Transportation for our region here in the offices of the City of Palm Coast yesterday, who was coming to congratulate us on staff's accomplishments and their collaborative working relationship with the DOT, and is going to help us manage the appropriations which we are about to get. Now, he came to us. That's a very how can I say it? That's as good as it gets, and offered all of their resources to make sure that our future projects, the Matanzas project in particular, are utilizing all of the resources that DOT has to offer. So I just wanted to share that out for you. The Flagler Schools Oversight Committee, I'm the chair. I've asked for a convening of that committee, which I believe we're talking about August. Mr. DiLorenzo, is that
That's correct.
about right? That is correct.
correct.
So August, and just to keep you up to date, that's the concurrency committee for the school district. So that's my report today. I only mentioned this at the last meeting to ask a report from each council member. So if your meeting hasn't occurred yet, maybe perhaps at the next meeting you'll share what has been happening with your reports. That's all I have for today.
I have nothing.
So a few things, I want to congratulate or echo the mayor's comments on congratulating the LITE team and also commending our staff for their mentorship of the LITE team as well. Also want to give a congratulations to Chief Welker on graduating from the FBI National Academy. That's quite the accomplishment, and so you should be very proud of that, and so should our sheriff's office. Went to the Flagler County Education Foundation dinner this past week. It was awesome, so congratulations to Teresa Rizzo on everything that she's done for that foundation, and also all of the people that contribute, because there's quite a village, so congratulations to all of them. I wanted to ask council for some feedback on any agenda items they've thought about for this meeting that I'm going to with Flagler Beach. I don't know what they're calling it, commission or multi-municipality commission, so to speak. If there's any agenda items that you all have thought about that need to be presented or discussed. And if you don't have anything yet, maybe the next meeting, just think about that, because I would like to go to something.
And I've offered to be the backup for that. The agenda item I would ask is, and I would assume it'll be covered, I'd like an update on their economic development, which is their project. So, you've got a hotel, you've got some new, it would be good for us to understand what is developing, certainly on the beach side there. So that would be helpful.
Okay, thank you.
I'm just really, I think that I'm just really interested in hearing what they're really thinking, because I've read different versions of this, and I mean, if they're there with their hand out, just expecting us to join with them and dump in a lot of money, I don't know how you can have a city on a beach in Florida and not make a lot of money. It would be, it would be like, what are they doing wrong? And I don't know if that's the case, but from what I've read, though, I'm concerned that if they're coming to us in this economic time period, especially, we have our own problems. We have our own things to deal with. Now, maybe we can incorporate Flagler Beach into Palm Coast and make a lot more money on that beach. I'd be in favor of that.
Well,
I'll tell you what, let's hold off on that, okay?
I'm not going with the assumption that they're asking for anything. I'm going in just trying to be very open-minded and have a collaborative communication. So, and I think that first meeting especially, that's the right approach to it. So if there's anything, again, that council would like to
please
put forward.
offer our support in their successful search for a new city manager. I think that would be good for everybody if they are successful. And my understanding is that their process has a relatively short timeline based on the interim duration. So it would be good for them to say, hey, we've got somebody.
I guess I'm a little surprised that they haven't waited to fill that slot before doing something like this. It seems like they've got the cart before the horse, and so that might be a concern you express.
I just have one more thing, Mayor, sorry.
Before you do that, did you have another, for
Flagler Beach, I was just concerned about the current state of their golf course and what they're doing with the golf course.
Good question.
Yeah, just regarding that. I don't want to say that we've been successful transforming ours, but we've been successful transforming ours, so.
Yep.
All right, sorry, anything else? I didn't realize you were going to him for that. Any, Councilwoman Hyder? Okay. The last thing is on July 11th, staff is doing a presentation on the pavement management program and some of our global solutions. I think that may also be a good time to bring up after staff has kind of gone back to the drawing table a little bit on our franchise fee. Because as we look to fund the paving of our roads, and we are having this discussion on millage, I think as we look to maybe perhaps grant a small rollback, we can look at ways to fund paving. And also, because this revenue source would be pretty much at our discretion how to use it, it could be also a way to fund Ralph Carter Park. So I would like consensus from council to see if we can put another presentation just on the franchise fee, the revenues that could be brought in based on the research that staff has done on the July 11th workshop, so that we can just see if that's an available revenue source for us for our infrastructure.
So you're talking about putting it on agenda for workshop presentation?
Correct, yes.
Of course.
I have one comment. Okay. I just want to back up a little bit, back to the Memorial Day weekend events that occurred. First, I would like to thank our fire department for the fire truck dedication that they did in memory of my son, Corporal Raheem Tyson Hyder. And I thank you so much for that. I am so grateful. And it was very special to me because I'm coming up on the 20th year anniversary of his death in Iraq. I also want to thank the Department of Parks and Recreation and also Veteran Services for allowing me to be the speaker at those two events. That was very heartfelt for me and meant a lot to me to be able to do that on Memorial Day this year. And one last thing, I just want to say, make mention of Flagler Volunteer Services. I just want to thank them. I attended their dinner on Saturday evening at the Hilton Garden, and I just think that they are a wonderful organization, and they come out and they really do a lot of hard work in the community, and I myself have used their services, and I really appreciate what they do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilperson.
My comments would be just kind of regarding our discussion earlier. I just wanted to kind of clarify that. My position is the way that Palm Coast exists today and the quality of life that we experience, we have to try to protect that. So when we have things that are coming about that are trying to change ordinances and regulations regarding things that people moved here understanding and accepting, we just have to be very cautious of that. And I'm only speaking for myself, but I just wanted to clarify why it may seem like it's harder to do new things than, you know, the existing things that are already here. And I knew who Fisher Ames was, but my point regarding that was we can't take something someone says out of context without understanding the big picture of it. But yeah, I think Palm Coast is a beautiful place, and we're doing a great job up here trying to be amenable to our residents. So I thank everybody up here for entertaining that.
Yeah, Councilman, thank you for your comments on that. I would say, you know, I think that going the pilot program and not making it extra stringent, but reasonable compared to what Orlando has done is kind of the nice medium road to show that we are considering something that does change something. Obviously, we're working on changing an ordinance, so I appreciate the council's consideration of taking that step, because I do think it's a good medium step for us to take.
Thank you.
I would ask City Councilor if you have any final comments for today.
I just have one thing. We've been notified, not in writing yet, but we were notified by the applicant for the Palm Coast Park Master Plan Development Agreement that they would like to continue the hearing that's set for June 27th. I just say that now because it's already going to be advertised, so it's already out for advertisement. So if we do actually get a written request to continue, then we'll be having the meeting per se, but we'll just open up the special business meeting and then grant the continuance.
Because we put a hard stop on it, but there could be a continuation. That's fine.
Yeah, that's right. It's the first
It's
one.
their request.
Their request. Yeah, they're requesting it. We're not. We don't have it in writing yet, but you know, of course, in the next meeting, if we get the written
Gives economic development more time to find that light industry.
I guess so. I don't know, but we just want to get it out. If we do get a written request, we just want to make sure people don't come and sit through the,
Okay.
you know, the workshop agenda meeting, waiting for this and not know. So this is just, I'm telling you this far in advance. So
Is that something we
people
could do at the very beginning? Get it out of the way?
Well, right now it's advertised that it's going to immediately follow the workshop, but we can do an announcement at the beginning of the meeting and say, hey, and I'm sure we'll use our social media platforms to do so. And then if we had forms filled out for public speakers and they put their contact information, we can contact them and let them know that we've received a continuance form and it's probably going to be granted. So just keep an eye out for a new notice and advertisement.
Thank you. City Manager.
Nothing today for me, Mayor.
Very good. Then I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? All in favor? Aye. Aye, we are adjourned. Thank you.